Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is the Weekly Spinner Rack. I'm your host, Chris. We're going to talk about comics and comic news. And this week had a few wild bits. We're going to talk about some of the cool stuff that DC is launching. In my opinion, maybe trying to get in a little bit on the audience that goes after manga. We're going to talk about some of the new comics that came out. Everything from, some superhero fare to some more smaller press stuff. I don't know. It's probably not fair to call Dark Horse small press, but smaller than Marvel and DC still. Some other crazy news coming out of like the MCU, Marvel Studios stuff. Looks like I've got a small stutter on the video. I don't quite know what that is, but let me throw out some shout outs to folks that happen to be here. Really appreciate folks jumping in. It's going to be a fun show. It's going to be one of those rare fun ones as compared to some of those miserable shows that we all just have to trudge through. But, that's awesome. I haven't seen you on the show in a couple weeks, Gene. I know you've been busy, but lovely to have my sister here. No stutter on this end? Okay, it may literally just be my monitor that's giving that feedback to me then. It looks like the video of me is hitching every once in a while, but I can't quite tell. Yes, hello. This is awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. If I missed you, it was personal. That's what happened. Is every once in a while, out of the hundreds of names that scroll down, I choose a few that I'm just like, I don't like that screen name. I don't know them as people. I admit that. But that screen name, no es bueno. I'm just kidding around. I love having you all here. This is going to be, good. I'm glad the audio is good for you. And hello. There is a little stutter. Okay. Well, I hope that smooths out. I'm broadcasting on it seems to have like a really good signal strength. I've got it all hardwired. I'm paying for the fastest internet possible. I've got some nice cameras these days, but maybe it's just a little too much. What do you call it? Like maybe I'm broadcasting it at too high resolution. I don't know. I saw a funny thing on YouTube this week that I just remembered. I saw the first person do a react video to one of my videos. It doesn't have tons of views or anything, but a gentleman from India reacted to one of my videos where I talk about Nagraj, a Indian superhero comic. That was kind of funny. Oh, that is a good point. Chrissy it is a little bit stormy where I am right now, and it hasn't really been that on a Monday night in quite a while. That literally could affect the internet a little, unfortunately. So, yeah. Let's see. Don't know Shingeki, so I didn't catch the finale of that. But as long as we're talking about like TV stuff, I've watched 7 of the 8 episodes of The Boys, and I really like that. I'm up to date on Loki. I think Loki is very strong thematically and with its actors and stuff. I think pacing-wise, it probably could have been a little better. It probably could have given us a little bit more outside of the TVA, even though the drama is what's happening in the TVA, if you've been keeping up. So it's not perfect, but it is still pretty entertaining in my opinion. What else have I been watching? Not a lot, to be honest. Like I say, I'm still behind an episode on The Boys. I keep saying The Boys. I mean Gen V. Excuse me. Gen V is good though. I really think it's good. Pluto. I would just throw that out there. If you have Netflix, Pluto is fantastic. It's really, really good. It's really good. Yeah, sorry everybody, you're speaking up. I did say The Boys. I meant Gen V, the spinoff. My apologies. Tell you what, there's a good amount of news. There's not tons of news, but I'd love to get into it. There's only a few comics. It was a relatively small week. I don't know. Are you guys familiar with the term fifth week? In comics, that refers to when there's a fifth. Well, it used to be Wednesday for everybody in the month. and therefore there were a few less comics that would come out on the 5th week because primarily they go in a 4-week cycle, and they'll give themselves that 5th week more as a buffer here and there. Um, but this week we had a 5th Tuesday, and DC releases their comics on Tuesday. So there wasn't really too much from DC this past week. So all I have are a few Marvel things and a Dark Horse thing. Anyway, yeah, it just means sort of a quieter week. So let's get into the news. Let me add this. As usual, I've just nailed it with my PowerPoint skills. And yeah, look, what am I holding there? A chisai manga, you might call it, a tiny comic book. We will get into that very soon. I'm excited to talk about that. I think that this is going to be an interesting idea that could have a lot of potential. And then we're going to talk about some of the MCU stuff. So that's why Robert Downey Jr. agreed to pose for these new thumbnails. That is absolutely him hanging out with me just for the thumbnail, though. Just for the thumbnail. So let's get into it. So DC has announced they are launching a line called Compact Comics. Got some alliteration, so nailed it there. And over here on the right, I've got an image showing basically the size of compact comics compared to a normal trade paperback comic. I'll break it down. So the new line is going to be priced at $9.99. Pretty competitive. I mean, that's less than most manga costs these days. It's going to be sized at 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. That is the most common size for normal paperback books. If you go to a bookstore, that's the most common paper size. And they're going to be pulling from their most acclaimed titles when they launch this. These are all existing comics that they're going to be releasing, the full story as a trade paperback. Watchmen, of course. All-Star Superman, fantastic book if you haven't read it. Far Sector, that's one I've been meaning to get, so I'll probably pick it up in this iteration. Wonder Woman Earth 1, Batman Hush, Batman The Court of Owls, that's Scott Snyder, followed by another Scott Snyder book, American Vampire. The book Joker, that was Lee Bermejo and Brian Azzarello, I think. Harley Quinn and the Gotham City Sirens, and Catwoman, Trail of the Catwoman. That was Ed Brubaker and Darwin Cook. Really glad that they included that one. I think that's slightly underrated, honestly. So basically, the same size as the normal trade paperbacks in terms of page, but they're printing it at a smaller size and only $10. That's a pretty competitive price point right now. For comparison, if we were to compare it to like the most common manga tankobon size, I was looking for a manga. Here's one. Most of these are going to be about just a notch over 5 inches across by a little bit over 7 inches tall. So the compact comics are slightly bigger than that. Slightly bigger. A little taller. Not too much wider. Very close, though. And, I mean, how easy are most tankobon to just sort of carry with you, right? So I think that they're trying to both find a competitive price point on stories that have a proven run, but also maybe build in some of the idea of disposability. Like you could just take it with you. Whatever happens to it is whatever happens to it. Yeah, did I say that it was smaller? It is a little larger than a typical tankobon. A little bigger than an Archie Digest, so if you've ever picked those up, you'll know that it's definitely going to be readable at this size. It's not too small. I think it's a good idea, to be honest. I have argued that Marvel and DC have these huge libraries that they could be printing in more affordable versions. For instance, they each used to do black and white trade paperbacks that were less expensive, and they sort of phased those out. In general, I think trades are a pretty affordable way to read more of a complete story. And I think at $10, it could really get a lot of people to try things that they haven't read. For instance, I'm thinking of picking up Far Sector. And maybe even getting a duplicate copy of some of these things for just to take with you on a trip. I don't know. I am excited by it. We will see if it's actually a hit. It speaks to me. Let's see. Um, I like this idea. Not my kind of thing, but maybe it'll be great for new readers. Maybe. Um, I'd like it to be. I'd like to see them find a format that's affordable and introduces this stuff to new readers. We'll see. Mango Do says it's easier to keep up with something like Akane Banashi than it is to keep up with something like Batman. DC needs some sort of Shonen Jump app equivalent. Yep. Digital comics need a bunch of work. But DC has had some good luck partnering with Webtoon on some original stuff. It tends to be skewed a little bit younger reader, but there's so many readers on the Webtoon platform that DC's had some success with that. This is good to get on the Target and Walmart shelves. I think that that's true. Also, Barnes and Noble. I think that this is the kind of stuff that can be mass marketed pretty easily. And a lot of these you will get a complete story. It's like people are like, where would I read, how do I read a whole Batman run? It's been going for, 85 years or something. Well, a storyline like Batman Hush or Batman the Court of Owls does more or less give you a complete story. So I think that that's a good idea. Haven't figured out what's for dinner. Good question. More of this for sure. This gets new peeps in the door. I hope so. And DC not slamming out books like Batman Year One in black and white on newsprint for $5 seems like a huge miss. Hey, who knows? This might open some doors. If it sells really well, I'm sure a bunch of publishers will be like, "Let's do this. Why haven't we done it yet?" But DC might be proving that it works. And if it doesn't, that's too bad. But I think it will. I think it's a good idea. Why are there only a few DC comics on shelves of Target and Walmart, but no Image, Dark Horse, or IDW? Well, that mostly comes more to their distribution partnerships than anything else. Also, DC as well as Marvel have, a dedicated distribution and marketing arm whose job it is to get into this kind of stuff. They could be doing even a lot more if it was important. But Image, for instance, is keeping really low overhead. It's up to the creators to get their books out there for the most part. Image is going to help you get into comic book stores. And that's about the extent of it. And you retain all of your rights. Dark Horse and IDW, they're well capitalized for what they are, but they also are trying to keep less overhead than places like Marvel and DC that have, big corporate daddies to support them. So, good question. Anyway, would Image even want their books in those stores? Absolutely. Absolutely. You think that Invincible or Walking Dead at a Target is not going to sell? Because it absolutely is. It absolutely is. Exactly right. Walmart is like, hey, Glamour magazine may not be the most exciting thing, but we know it sells. So that's getting some shelf space. You want to pitch me a comic book? You have to, really sell me that it's going to sell better than Time magazine or whatever. Because it's taken up that space that exists. I wonder if digital versions of the comics would affect the sales of these. I don't think so. I think that this is definitely going at a more portable, physical audience. So anyway, are you ever going to show us the Transformers comic you made when you were 10? I did. I made an episode on comic tropes. I showed 30 of the 60 pages, and I was like, hey, if the video does incredible, I'll show you the next 30. It did okay. I don't think anybody needed any more of it. And to be clear, it's very repetitious. It's just 30 more pages of the same stuff. But yeah, there is an episode on comic tropes, the Transformers comic I made when I was 10 years old. So, just wanted to go over that. That's I think that's pretty big news as an idea. I hope it works. in the sense that I believe a rising tide lifts all boats. I think if this sold well, that's good for the industry in general. This one has a little bit more than just sort of like, hey, Joker 2 is coming out. Let me. It's a little bit of speculation I'm going to get into, but the cinematographer on Joker 2 has said that it's going to surprise audiences. That could be hyperbole, but let me get into this. So, Lawrence Sher is the cinematographer on Joker, and I can't pronounce French, but it's something like Folie à deux. Spoke with Definition magazine about it. Among that, I've got two quotes I wanted to point out. One is, we've got the new Joker coming out next year, and we're just finishing up post-production on it. Cool. So it's almost done. This movie is a big swing, and it's going to be really surprising to people. That's interesting to me. If he's right, if he's not just talking, I'm so excited for everyone to see it. Here's the next quote I wanted to tie into that he had in this Definition magazine. Or no, excuse me. That was the quote. This is more folie à deux. If you look at that, it translates to madness of two, and there is a medical definition for it, which is an identical or similar mental disorder affecting two or more individuals, usually members of the same family. Let me wildly speculate here. What if in this Joker thing, which isn't, the main continuity, what if Harley Quinn is not a girlfriend, but actually something like a sister? I don't know. That would be an interesting angle. Maybe I'm crazy for even thinking that, but if she was, the title might make sense. We'll see. It might not be anything. It just might be two crazy people, and it still makes sense. But that could be a unique angle, since so much of the first Joker movie was more personal and was about like more, like his madness with his mother's madness and stuff like that. It'd be unique idea. Since Joker was heavily inspired, that's an understatement. Heavily inspired by Scorsese films like Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, the sequel, being a musical, will probably be inspired by New York, New York. That's possible. That's possible. Rob, nice to see you. I think the most surprising thing in one of these Joker movies would be if Batman showed up. Well, that's true. That would be the most surprising thing at this point. Harley Quinn is his aunt. I don't think that Lady Gaga can quite pass for Joaquin Phoenix's aunt. But anyway, just something I thrown out there. We shall see. That's right. Folie à deux was an X-Files episode. The sufferers weren't family, but coworkers. I barely remember that now. Boy, X-Files had a prime era where it was really good. It did fall off, but boy, it had a good era. And that show, if it was rebooted with more of a plan for where it was going, even with new characters, I love that. I could see that. A twin sister. I don't know. I wouldn't say that I hated the first Joker, but like it was just said, boy, does it feel like stuff I'd seen before. Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, two Martin Scorsese films that Joker absolutely felt like it was the same thing. That's all. And that's a little different for a take on a sort of a supervillain, superhero world, but it's a movie that I've definitely seen before. So I saw it and I was like, this is well done, but I feel like I've seen it before. I didn't feel that original to me. Wait, I didn't say anything about incest. I didn't say anything about incest. All I was saying is, what if the title purely refers to the fact that maybe Harley is not a girlfriend and is a sister or something like that? I don't know. Moving on. Here's a quick one. My Hero Academia is partnering with the NBA, which I guess just goes to show how popular manga, and specifically in this case, the anime adaptation, can be. Look at all the companies that had to get involved for this. Toho Animation, the NBA, Hyperfly, NBA Lab, and Crunchyroll all teamed up to make 4 t-shirts. um, yeah, they all just have, like the team on. I don't know if that's the front or the back, to be honest. But like 4 teams. We've got the Golden State Warriors, the Chicago Bulls, the LA Lakers, and the New York Knicks. And on the other side, it says Smash because the character they're using is All Might, and that's his catchphrase. The one cool part is that the team names are in Japanese on the back here, so that's a little unique. If you are already a big fan of both, cool. I don't think that they'll be selling a lot of these to somebody that's a fan of only one. But I also, now that I'm thinking of it, I also saw another collaboration for clothes. Skechers is teaming up with DC Comics. But what's strange is the shoes that they're releasing have the colors of the characters, but no logos or anything. So, like, there's a Batman shoe, but it's gray with some yellow offset. There's a Superman shoe that's blue and red, but there's no Superman logo or Batman logo. There's a Harley Quinn shoe, etc. Um, a fine collaboration. I actually find Skechers super comfortable. They tend to be the sneakers I wear the most because I'm not a sneakerhead collector guy. Um, but I feel like if you're going to do that collaboration, that maybe you should at least have a logo or a silhouette, something that ties in a little bit more to the comic character than just some colors. I don't know. Did they? Skechers did a One Piece collab? That one totally flew over my head. Okay. Have you heard recently they released the novelization of the first two Godzilla films from the 1950s, translated by the original writer? No, did not know about that. That's kind of cool. Anyway. Yeah, I see what you mean. Like Nolan, the only thing is I feel like even though stylistically it was the same, it was still an original crime story. Whereas Joker, I felt like actually took character beats from the other movies that we mentioned by Scorsese. That would be the one difference. Kevin, they have Godzilla everything in Japan. Trust me. Oh yeah, just 4 teams so far. Here's a collaboration between 2 companies that could lead to something interesting, although it's just been announced so far, so nothing's come out. Vault, who probably a bunch of you know by now, they make a couple comics that are well known, and a company called Athon are teaming up to adapt each other's works. Let me break that down. So Vault and Athon announced that they will do this collaboration in 2024. So we're still several months away from seeing anything. What will happen is Athon will create ebook and audiobook adaptations of Vault titles, and in turn, Vault will adapt certain Athon books. However, they haven't announced any specific titles yet, so I don't have a lot to hype there. I just listed a few Vault books you might have heard of. Barbaric, Money Shot, Unnatural Order just came out this past week. No specific titles. But audiobook adaptations of comic runs doesn't sound like a bad idea. If it was affordable, that could be kind of a fun way, I think, to commute to work or something. I don't know. We'll see. Godzilla breakfast cereal, Godzilla flamethrower. The kids love this. Is that a Spaceballs joke? I think I got that. I've heard that one mentioned a couple times, but I don't really know what it's about. Blue Flame. Blue Flame is a good book from Vault, huh? Yeah, I'm seeing Vault make more and more waves, so good for them. Could be cool. There, yes, right. What's Amazon's ebook? Audiobook arm. I'm forgetting it right now, but yeah, they did an adaptation of Sandman with an all-star cast, and I know that got good reviews. Sometimes I just don't need to see another adaptation of something. I prefer the comic. Sometimes I do like adaptations. Sometimes I don't need it. Audible. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Hector says, I'm planning to buy the image quality from Cyber 6 is mind-blowing. Oh, I'm planning to buy, period. The image quality from Cyber 6 is mind-blowing. Yeah, that's cool to see that Cyber 6 is getting an updated Blu-ray release. I thought that episode that I did talking about it might have gotten more views, but maybe it wasn't a good thumbnail or title or something. You never know. Really interesting comic, but a great cartoon adaptation. I can't wait. I've already got my ticket. I've already got my, and I'm probably going to see, for instance, the Marvels. It's comic book related, and I like to stay plugged in, no matter how excited I am these days. I like to have that information, but I haven't bought that ticket yet. But I got Godzilla a month ahead of time. I like Godzilla. Vault creators Ram V, Dan Waters, yeah, Michael Moretti, I know, is doing a bunch of you hyped for Godzilla -1. It looks good. It legit looks like a scary take on the material. Like Godzilla is truly a terrifying force. We'll see. Bodies is topping the Netflix chart. Unknown to many, it's based on a comic book that's out of print. It's not easy to find right now. It's crazy. So, since launching on Netflix on October 19th, Bodies has remained in the top 10 most watched shows on Netflix. They announced this week that it had over 58 million hours of views worldwide. For a small mini series that's only been out like about 2 weeks right now, that's really good. Okay, a couple people saying don't know what it is. I'm going to explain. Bodies was a Vertigo comic. A lot of news articles say that it was written by Cy Spurrier. That is incorrect. It was written by a guy named Cy Spencer, who passed away a couple years ago, but he was a good writer. Bodies takes place over 4 different time periods, but all of them involve somebody finding a murder victim in the same place. So there is a through line. It's both sort of like well, it's very much a crime whodunit, but it's also technically sci-fi. It was based on a 2014 crime sci-fi Vertigo comic, Vertigo from DC, by Cy Spencer, and it was several artists. I put in Tula Late because I like her work, but like each time period had a different artist. So it was Vertigo DC, and yeah, currently out of print. Basically, I'm trying to remember the eras. One of them is sort of, like the late 1800s, sort of Jack the Ripper time period. Another is during, I want to say World War II. There's sort of like then modern, like it was 2014, and then one in the future. And they're all a little different. They all have different detectives with different like motivations and backstories, but they're all investigating a body that was found in the same place. Let's see. I ordered one from my library. It still hasn't come. Yeah. But isn't that weird, folks? Like when a huge company like DC knows that they've got an adaptation coming out and they're like, probably not worth reprinting. And then it ends up, being a hit. Like, I think you need to hedge your bets to make the money. Like, hedge the bets by actually reprinting it. Maybe even if it's like a small print run. But this show has been huge. I haven't seen it yet, but I've got coworkers talking about it. They really like it. It's supposed to be very good. I know the comic was originally like, pretty acclaimed. I mean, otherwise it probably wouldn't have been picked up for an adaptation. But it blows my mind that they know that this is coming out and they don't bother to like reprint it or something like that. I mean, even put it on, say, like your website as a free digital comic, right? Just to bring people to that website at the minimum. Just say like, hey, guess what? You like that show? Why not read the original comic at dcuniverse.com or something? That's an interesting point. Maybe DC doesn't have the rights anymore. That's an interesting point. I hadn't even considered that, Rob. I'm pretty sure that Vertigo always owned at least part of the rights to everything they printed. I don't think that they ever did full creator-owned stuff. So I don't think that that would be the case, but it is an interesting point. That is an interesting point. There could be something related to that I don't know. I heard of my friends talking about it. I'm going to check it out when I get some free time. Tula Lute is so good. My favorite Punisher run? You know, probably Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon, Welcome Back, Frank. That was really fun. And there's a couple runs that I like. I really like the original miniseries. I do. I liked, I mean, as a kid anyway, I really liked the original Punisher War Journal with Jim Lee. It just hit at the right time. Might not hold up well story-wise, I don't know. I also really liked Rick Remender and Tony Moore's Frankencastle run. I thought that that was really cool. The merger maybe messed up some of the smaller type projects. That's a good point too. Chuck's right. You know, like there was the merger of Discovery buying Warner Brothers, who owns DC Comics. There's a possibility that just it got lost in the shuffle. It wasn't a priority for them. I just would argue it should have been. That's all I'm arguing, is it should have been. Some Vertigo comics went back to their artists. Most of these series that most of those were series that failed or some more obscure graphic novels. Okay, that's interesting. Hi, Daniel. Thanks for jumping in. Yeah, if since the creator passed away a couple years ago, that may have made it a little trickier to get the rights sorted out, but the show still happened. So you'd think that if they knew the show was coming, you'd have more than enough heads up to figure out the right situation for a reprint on the comic at the same time. You're already working with whoever these people are that have control. I'm just saying that it seems to me that DC / Warner Brothers / Discovery left some money on the table there because this show is a hit, and I think you could have translated a portion of those into comics readers. I know personally, this was enough to get me to want to pick it up. Can't find it at a fair price anywhere. Now, I might be able to still find it in a comic book store at a good price, but it's out of print. So, frustrating. We'll see. I need more coffee. Obviously, I'm low energy. Sorry to drag you all down with me. Joe Hill has announced that he's leaving comics, and I like Joe Hill. I think he's a good writer. I love Lock and Key. Love it. I made an episode about it. Loved it. Love that comic. And I liked his Basket Full of Heads, and I liked Plunge. Anyway, he both writes for and curates the Hill House Comics horror line imprint that's published through DC Comics. They've been doing that since 2019. Again, of those books, I think Plunge is incredible. I think the first Basket Full of Heads is really, really good. But Joe Hill was a guest on the Short Box podcast this week, and he explained that he's going to be taking a break from comics. He's got a specific reason. This is a quote. So pretend I sound like Stephen King, but 30 years younger, and that's how you get Joe Hill's voice. He says, I'm actually out of comics for the next few years. I've written 4 novels, and I'd like to have at least 10 novels before I'm done being a novelist. I'd like to write another 6 novels. So right now, that's my complete focus, getting the next novels written. That's where his passion lies. Can't be upset about that. There is some promising news within this, though. I'd like to stack up the next 2 or 3 novels before I return to comics. So he's not saying never. He does have some plans. He says there's some possible exceptions. Chris Ryall has been adapting the novellas from my book Strange Weather for Image, and I would love to do a script. No, I think that's an extra word that was transcribed in there. I would love to script one of those adaptations myself. It would be an adaptation of a novella called Loaded. It's actually set in Florida. So he may come back for something small. He also did say in this interview, though, that he and Gabriel Rodriguez do have plans to revisit Lock and Key at some point. I assume by the way he said that, like revisited, that he's talking more about a new complete story, not just sort of like a one shot tied to that world. Who knows? I loved Lock and Key. I think it was so good. I like this from Buck Dancer. Stephen King, but 30 years younger. Garth Marenghi. What was it? There was a Garth Marenghi joke on that show Star Trek Lower Decks. That's the animated series. I didn't see the episode, but the title was something like Parth Ferenghi's Heart Place, something like that. It was about like a Ferengi deal. I was cool. Fable was Vertigo too. Yes. Yeah, he says he released his ownership, but that's definitely been contested, so we'll see. Yes, Stephen King, pretty much the only comic he did 2 things. He did like I think a page basically for a World Hunger book through Marvel in like the late 80s or early 90s. I want to say it was called Heroes for Hope. It's hard to remember. That just tweaks something in the back of my mind. Of course, you know, he's had adaptations of his work, with like probably the most elaborate comics adaptation being the Gunslinger books, which I think Peter David mostly wrote, but he sort of provided some oversight onto that to make sure that it all like fit his continuity in the Dark Tower. But yeah, as far as like actually writing sort of an ongoing story, he did backup stories in the first several issues of American Vampire. And so if you want to see Stephen King write comics, that's pretty much all you can do. Yeah, that's true. Snyder did say that he's got a new American Vampire stuff coming out. I love Lock and Key. Very interested in what they might do with follow-up. Me too, always. Lock and Key is brilliant. Yep. It was Heroes for Hope. Okay, so I'm remembering right. Cool. King wrote a foreword to Batman 400. Fair. He did a short story for Detective Comics 600. Geez, I probably read that, and that part, that I don't remember. Okay. You might remember that from the interview I did with Scott Snyder. He talks about how he went to college with Joe Hill, and he didn't know for ages that he was Stephen King's son. It's pretty funny. Listen to the interview. It's a pretty funny story. Nice. Yeah, he wrote Creepshow, the movie, but that was not technically... It was meant to be like Tales from the Crypt, but it wasn't originally like a comic. It was a movie that was meant to look like a comic adaptation. This is somewhat local to me in that this happened in my state. There was a Washington comic book store that was robbed. I always just sort of mention these because you never know if you spread the word, maybe somebody knows something and these guys can get caught, or the store owner can be made right somehow. I want to hope. So it's called the Comics Place, and it's up in Bellingham, which is way to the north. It's honestly closer to like Vancouver, Canada than it is to me, but it's in my state. It was broken into just this past Tuesday. Thousands of dollars worth of comics and Magic cards were stolen, including, the owner pointed out, Fantastic Four number 48. Pretty important issue. There is a security camera footage stuff, but it's really hard to see who the people were. this guy is like running out here, and this is the same guy. You can barely see him, but all he does is like open up this shelf and just pull together all the sort of key comic issues they have at their front display. Um, I watched the security footage. It's on like, the news around here. Two people wearing masks. They run in with backpacks. They scoop things up. It all takes place in less than a minute. They knew where to go. They knew where to go. The owner, by the way, this is the only entertaining part of this. The owner was amused by this. He had set a prank for his opening staff where he was going to have the music for the movie The Hills Have Eyes 2 just absolutely blaring when the doors opened. So when these thieves opened the doors, that did set off this like scary music playing at full volume. And then the police showed up to, take a report, and it still is just absolutely blaring. It's a little funny how awkward that is. I don't know. It could go on eBay. It could also get sold, to like things like pawn shops for all I know. It's really hard. Yeah, if only it scared them away. Exactly. I think that people have just realized that it's potentially easy to do. I think if you are a comic shop owner or employee and you've been hearing me, I know, like mention a story every once in a while about these things, just consider that it might be worth investing in more than just a security camera. Make sure that the windows are glass that's not easily breakable, or that if they can break in through a window, that it's not easy to navigate through the store from that window. Find ways to lock up the most valuable stuff. I don't know. I mean, that's a stretch. Of course that's possible, but until there's any real evidence, I think it's more likely that, people are actually robbing places. Anyway, just spreading the word. I want to move on. There was a big article this week in terms of how much conversation it had on social media, at least in the circles I travel, which are admittedly comic book related circles. Variety had a huge article of, is Marvel in trouble? By the way, they're talking about the movies. I think the word comic book got spoken about like literally like 4 times in this humongous article. They really breeze over the comic book aspect and are just talking about, how well are the movies doing. So the article discussed, from some insiders that Marvel Studios had a retreat, like writers and producers met in September. One of the big things they wanted to discuss was what should they do about Jonathan Majors. And I haven't really been talking about him in the news because it's still an ongoing case. He's alleged to have abused his girlfriend, but there's also a fair amount of evidence that she may have been making at least some of that up. So it's really unclear in my eyes whether he actually did anything criminal yet. He may have, which would be terrible. So Marvel's in this really awkward position where it's just not obvious. Like, do they risk it by keeping Jonathan Majors as Kang because they were planning to do a lot of multiverse stuff for the next phase or so? They've already announced that they were planning on doing like the Avengers, Secret Wars, and Avengers Kang Dynasty. Ties into the multiverse stuff. Kang is a super important character there. Super important. Do they stay with him? Do they recast? That might be the safest bet, in my opinion. Just recast. Or would that be acting too premature and we're going to find out that this guy is innocent? In which case, that's not a good look that you like sort of didn't stand behind somebody. It's hard. It's not an easy question as a business. I don't know. I would probably have recast, but that's me. I don't know. Yes, they bet a ton on Jonathan Majors. And hey, let me say, the guy's a good actor. Did you see him in Creed 3? I think that was a really interesting performance for a guy that was sort of the villain, but like kind of complex. I don't know. I think he or what was that? Lovecraft County or something on HBO. He's a good actor. Okay, he's a good actor. It's tricky. So that's one concern they have. Okay, that's just one concern. The article lost some credibility in my eyes over several days. Like at first, this was going to be sort of like my centerpiece that I was going to talk about this week. And then a bunch of people sort of like that were in the know sort of shot back and debunked some of the stuff that was claimed in the article. For instance, the article claimed that originally Marvel had a script for the movie Blade, where Blade was going to be the fourth lead behind a bunch of new female characters. And the writer of the script was like, no, that was never the case. I don't know where you pulled that from. I tend to believe them. There's also accusations that director Nia DaCosta, she's making this movie that's coming out right now, The Marvels, that she was not involved enough because she did a bunch of the post-production work remotely. Just to be clear, it is super common for directors to do some post-production work remotely while they work on their next project. That's a common thing. Like, you think that Steven Spielberg does one movie and isn't like producing any other shows or movies and like then that's over and he goes into the next one? No, like overlap is pretty normal. So some of the stuff in the article I don't feel is that accurate, but we'll see. We'll see. They do point some facts out though. I mean, the problems for Marvel Studios definitely started during the pandemic. First of all, we had a big break, and it happened right after there was a pretty good amount of closure with that Avengers movie. So, like there wasn't necessarily like a hunger for the next phase. On top of that, Disney Studios chairman at the time, Bob Chapek, was like, we need to raise Disney's profits. Marvel's doing well. I want you to produce not like 3 movies a year. I want you to produce like 4 or 5 movies a year and like, up to 8 Marvel Studios TV shows a year. And in 2021, take a look, and there's something like crazy, like it was either 5 or 6 TV shows on Disney Plus that we got like all in a row. Remember, it was like WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, What If, Loki. Did I say Loki already? I don't know. But there were a bunch all right in a row. And they were cranking out all these movies. It was just too much and they were stretched too thin. I think that like probably a movie like, I don't know, The Eternals or something may have been better if Marvel was doing less and spent more time crafting that. Hard to be hungry with 30 new shoes a year. I know you meant shows. Yeah, exactly. Steven Soderbergh. He works on a bunch of stuff. So the article is interesting, but I would just say read some of it with a grain of salt, because some of the things that they allege are problems with Marvel Studios, I'm like, I don't really feel like you have a solid basis for that accusation. Do we all know that like Marvel has stumbled a couple times in the past year? We do. Like Secret Invasion was a bad TV show. And while I actually liked Ant-Man and the Wasp 3 Quantumania, there's no denying that it didn't perform to expectations at the box office, and that's a concern. I liked it, but some people didn't, and that's okay. So, Marvel needs to be careful. For what it's worth, the Disney board of directors did oust Bob Chapek and put back in Bob Iger, and Iger was like, let's do less. Let's up the quality. And it seems like Kevin Feige has a little bit more bandwidth again. So hopefully some of these projects start having their quality go up again. What I'm worried about is that this is going to make the decision makers with the money, like the purse string holders, board of directors type people, are going to get nervous, and they're going to just sort of like second guess a lot of what Marvel's doing. And while none of Marvel's been perfect, I mean, even early movies like Incredible Hulk or Thor: The Dark World were kind of only average, to be honest. There was still an overall direction, and they were definitely allowed a lot of creative freedom. in terms of how they would approach that. And I think that they still need to do that. Yes, Doctor Strange did fine. The Guardians of the Galaxy did fine. I think that honestly, the only one that didn't really turn a good profit, well, no, two, Black Widow, but that was released in the pandemic and wasn't expected to necessarily make a lot of money. And Ant-Man 3 underperformed. The others are doing fine. So they're not failing across the board, but they are like doing some stuff that's not great. I mean, Secret Invasion was just it was bad. It was bad. It was frustrating. Um, I've got a follow up on this. So people are worried about Marvel, and so rumors are spreading. I personally don't think I believe this one, but boy, does it have a lot of traction this past week. A rumor that Marvel Studios is bringing back popular actors. So specifically, My Time to Shine Hello, and they have gotten a bunch of scoops right. They are an anonymous movie scoopster. Okay, they're anonymous, so it's not the same as if it came from, say, the Hollywood Reporter or Variety, like actual trade publications. The rumor is that Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson are being invited back. That they're going to bring back the popular characters. It's comics; you can do that. There's even multiverses if you have to, let alone reversing a death. If anyway, and here was My Time to Shine Hello just 5 days ago, posting Robert Downey Jr. already agreed to come back. That has not been confirmed by Downey Jr., Marvel Studios, or his agent, although I guess they might be trying to hold that as a secret for a few years, possibly. The other rumor is that Marvel is seriously considering phasing out Kang and replacing him with Doctor Doom. I love Doctor Doom. Fantastic villain. Better than Kang in terms of history and depth and stuff, but I don't think that Doctor Doom can easily slot into wrapping up a multiverse story per se. Like multiverse and time travel is Kang. And Doctor Doom has a role to play within the most recent Secret Wars, but I don't necessarily think Doctor Doom should be the one pulling the strings and everything. We'll see. Yeah, I don't mind too much in serialized superhero books that I know are meant to go on and on when characters come back from the dead. Sometimes I mind, sometimes I don't. I do think of it a bit as a soap opera, so I'm okay with some of it. But in the movies, they really did effectively give final stories to some of the Avengers in Avengers Endgame. And it would undo a lot of the emotional heft to bring those characters back. I think that it's better to just continue with some of the replacement characters like Yelena Belova and maybe Ironheart, maybe Rhodey as War Machine, maybe somebody new. And then eventually, yeah, someday you probably do reboot it. I don't think you need to reboot Marvel MCU yet. I don't think you need to do a reboot, but someday you will. I mean, at some point, all the people that have played Avengers and, Fantastic Four and Spider-Man would be too old, and you need some of those characters. I kind of agree with you. The only reason I'm really sharing this rumor is it got shared a lot on, say, every nerd site, especially the ones that talk about comics. It got shared a lot. So I just didn't want to ignore it. I wanted to sort of give my 2 cents on it. I don't know. How many years later would warrant a reboot? You know what? It would depend. You have to sort of make that decision every couple of years. For instance, if Marvel can keep Tom Holland for, say, another 6 or 7 years, you can get a couple more Spider-Man stories, maybe Fantastic Four lands, maybe you introduce the X-Men, and that's a huge hit, and you don't need the Avengers for a little while. So it could go another 10 years or so before you need to reboot. But at a certain point, people are going to want Captain America and Thor and Iron Man, and they'll be okay if it's recast because it'll have been a while. We'll see. If Rhodey got recast between Iron Man 1 and 2 without a fuss, even to this day, I'm sure they can do it for mainline characters without reboots. Yeah, there's one or two other characters that they've recast, right? I mean, not. I mean, Fandral? I don't know. Like, who else did they recast? Not many, I guess. They haven't recast too many, but there have been a few. We'll see. They should just move on to the X-Men end of things. Yeah, you always have that. The only reason they haven't yet, the best understanding is that the deals a lot of the actors had at Fox Studios continued on to Marvel, where they were called basically pay or play deals, where if those roles were recast, the original actor would still have to get paid that salary on top of whoever the new actor was. So Marvel was more like, you know what, like we can wait a few more years for those contracts to all expire. But that's also why they can easily still get Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman to sort of do cameos or recurring appearances, because they do still technically sort of have a contract where, and they don't have to, they're not recasting those roles yet, but soon they will. Soon they will. Oh yeah, you're right. They recast Cassie Lang from Ant-Man. Yep, that's true. There was a different actress playing her in Avengers Endgame. You know, if you recast everybody, it feels like it doesn't have the same continuity, but you do one or two, and I think people roll with it. We'll move on to some more comic book stuff instead of comic book adaptation stuff. Sean Gordon Murphy previewed some lettered Zorro pages, and you can find some more of those online. But I'm excited for this. I like Sean Gordon Murphy's art quite a bit. His crowdfunded Zorro book, which is going to be published by Massive Publishing, was a pretty big success. It wrapped up this week, just over $302,000 raised. $302,000. That's a lot. That's a lot. This is one of the pages that was shared on Bleeding Cool. They shared a couple of the lettered finished pages just to give people an idea of what it's looking like. By the way, though, there was a lot of outcry this past week. I will caution you. It's basically from Comicsgate people. At least that's my understanding. I'm not an expert on that subject matter, I will admit. But I thought that like Sean Gordon Murphy was appreciated by that side of comics. But no, apparently they've accused him of being woke. And specifically, they attacked him for this Zorro comic because this version of the main character will have a lesbian sister, which, whatever, you know, that, yeah, he's got a supporting cast. This isn't an adaptation of the original Zorro. They got the rights to it, but this is a guy who has some mental issues, and he believes he is Zorro, and he trains to be Zorro, but he is not technically Zorro. In this world, the fictional Zorro exists, and this guy tries to be him. Okay? So, I call that a bunch of whatever, but if you looked up Zorro this week or Sean Gordon Murphy, and like tried to like limit it by like what you saw in the past week, you'd also see the word woke show up in pretty much every article. So that's just what it was. Crazy. No, not Diego de la Vega. Not sort of a crazy cosplayer. Fighting for the same reasons, you know, like injustice and stuff, but set in the modern day. I know. I don't know why sometimes diversity offends people when it's not even like recasting a character. Like, these people exist in the world. Why is that a problem? I don't know. I don't understand it, and I never will. They can probably like talk to me, and I'd sit there and listen, and I don't think I'd quite understand why it bothers them. I really don't. I don't even feel like the word woke sounds like an insult, by the way. That sounds like you're being alert and aware. I don't understand how that can be an insult, but I'm obviously just not that guy. If you know, I do believe that there are a few fans that believe in the log line that these people say, where they're just trying to produce good comics for the customers. I do believe that there are a few people that believe in that, but I think that there's also a lot of bad faith actors that just use that argument to get views and sell some comics. I do believe that as well. Thank you for the super chat. The word woke is actually called progressive. Yeah, doesn't bother me. That doesn't bother me personally. That's okay. Yeah, the idea of a mantle for Zorro is also not quite what this comic is doing, but I do kind of like that idea, which they basically did in the last Zorro movies with Antonio Banderas and Anthony Hopkins. That was kind of cool. I'm okay with the idea of sort of a legacy. Now that I think of it, I should probably do an episode soon about the Phantom, because that was definitely one of the very first superheroes out there that wore a mask. Was a comic strip as compared to a comic book, but predated a lot of other superheroes, almost every superhero, and introduced the idea of a legacy, a mantle to be handed down generation to generation, which pretty important idea for comics. It was like generations before the Flash did that. Yeah. So someday I'll talk about the Phantom. Phantom is interesting. Still very popular in some parts of the world. Australia, I want to say Denmark or Finland or something. Like, there are parts of the world where they still make new Phantom stories, and he's very, very popular still. This one just depressed me. You can see the image. That's a screen cap from the actual website. You can see my title there. Dashtune apparently is a company that has launched an AI kit to help you make comics. So, feel like you can't write or draw? Just issue a prompt. Now you can make a crappy comic. So Dashtune is an organization that raised over $5 million in venture capital, and they've launched an online comics platform. Technically, it's through an app. You have to be on Android or iPhone to open up Dashtune. But they also offer AI tools, which are called Dashtune Studio, for people that can't make their own comics. And look at like what they've done here with their header. The AI comic creator you've been waiting for. And that isn't exactly Comic Sans, but it does not look good to me. You couldn't have at least given this either a stroke or a drop shadow of some sort to help pull it out from the background. I don't know. It just looks awful. Yeah, there have been a bunch of comic book movies based on comic strips. I know the one you're talking about. Oh my god, it's just I tried to look at a few of the images, and it all just looked. It's all sort of like AI does not really know how to like follow many of your leads for perspective. Like, you want to like everything's like a medium shot of a person. Everything is like really bland. The storytelling is terrible. Individual art pieces, if you tweak it enough, can look okay, but the storytelling is god awful still. I did not know that there was a new Flash Gordon strip from King Features Syndicate. That's interesting. Uh Man, Alex Raymond, if you haven't seen his work on Flash Gordon and Rip Kirby, boy, was he an incredible artist. Someday I'll make an episode about Alex Raymond. Short career, all things considered. Died young. Died in his early 40s in a car crash. Some people are wondering if he did it on purpose. Others say it was just an accident and people are making too much of it. Boy, his artwork was gorgeous. Really brave with dropping lots of heavy black ink. Definitely must have inspired somebody like Mike Mignola. Yeah. I thought you put that header to mock them. They are mocking themselves. Apparently so. That's real. This image, everything right of my like sort of bullet points and header. This is just a screenshot from Dashtune Studio. None of this has been doctored in any way. I just dropped in an actual shot. Oh man, yeah. Alex Toth could do no wrong. As I get older, there's just guys like Alex Toth and and Alex Raymond that really excite me. And I just wish that like there was even more comics by them. That would have been really cool. Yeah. Paul Ryan was underrated. I liked him. You know, he's a workhorse kind of guy. He was a jobber in a sense, as cartoonist kayfabe would probably call him. But Paul Ryan was good. I liked his work on Fantastic Four. Okay, anytime they can get away with hiding the hands, they will. I'll keep moving so that we can get to drawing and get to some comics reviews. The Echo. Oh, I say director. I think I meant producer. Yeah, a producer on the upcoming Echo show says that her powers are, and this is her quote, lame, which I think is problematic. But a lot of people accused me of being too sensitive, so maybe I'm wrong. Uh, by the way, Echo was not a show I was initially excited for. Then the trailer came out this week, and I thought it looked really good, so I got excited. And then the next day, um, one of the producers sort of badmouthed the character. Listen to this. So, first of all, the Echo trailer came out and got 4.8 million views in just 4 days. That's pretty good. It's going to be Marvel's first TV MA show, so make of that what you will. And it's also launching under the Marvel Spotlight banner, which I guess is meant to sort of indicate that it's not it's in the MCU, but it's not directly tied with lots of references and stuff. You can like enjoy a Spotlight piece by itself is the goal, But here's the quote. Producer Sydney Freeland was at a press event. This was covered by Variety, and she said about Echo, her power in the comic books is that she can copy anything, any movement, any whatever. It's kind of lame. I will say that is not her power. I'll just kind of leave it at that. First of all, I don't think it's a bad power. I think it's a cool power. I thought it was cool when Taskmaster did it, when Echo was revealed to be deaf, but like basically have that same sort of mutant power of mimicking what she could see. I thought it made her a badass. I thought that in that world of Marvel Comics, I think it's a cool power. I really do. Just imagine if you could just watch some martial arts videos or MMA fights, and then you could do that. That's powerful, in my opinion. So here's what I said, that it was insensitive to use the word lame when you're talking about somebody played by an actress with a prosthetic leg. Uh, if you look up the dictionary definition of lame, the first definition is that it's somebody with, like a disability. A lot of people were saying, no, that's an old word. Nobody uses it that way anymore. Or you only talk about animals that way. I was like, no, I swear to God, like differently abled people do not like the word lame to be used as a pejorative is what I'm saying. That's been my experience. So I was trying to honor that. But some people are saying I was being too sensitive. I guess it's possible I am. But I'd probably rather err on the side of being sensitive to people like that than like offending them. I feel like it just wasn't a good word choice no matter what. And look, I mean, I know that I have used it in some of my videos. I'm sure I have, because I had people respond to me asking me not to do that. And I hadn't thought of it that way, but I got told by viewers, hey, I have what's classified as a disability, and you shouldn't be using the word lame that way, Chris. I go, oh, I didn't know that. But I'm not the one to say whether something's offensive or not. Like those people would be that are telling me this. So I'm trying to respect that. And I feel like somebody that makes a show like this should have come across that. I don't know. What kind of label is Marvel Spotlight? I don't know. I think it's because there was a comic book for a long time called Marvel Spotlight, and it would feature an individual story. So I think that it's just taking it from the comics. That's a bad idea. I mean, even if you have autism or any form of a stigmatized disability, they see it as their superpower. Interesting idea. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. Hey, Chris, I remember watching your video on John Buscema, and must have seen it many times. And as an aspiring artist, I'm currently copying his art along with his brother Sal, with Ron Friends too. Well, sometimes copying art is a good way to learn. I wouldn't say that like it's a good way to don't get too locked into just copying. Like definitely push yourself out of your comfort zone by doing life drawing as well so that you can stay loose and develop your own style. But there's definitely a lot that you can learn from those storytellers. There's a lot you can learn. So copying is not the worst thing. And yeah, John Buscema is awesome. So good luck with all of that. Let's see. Um, Thank you, Hulkzilla. Be true to yourself. You're a clever, insightful, and delightful person. You're a cool dude. I, I just maybe I'm too sensitive, and if that's a failing, so be it. I don't want to hurt somebody for no reason. That's all. Like that doesn't make me feel good if I know that I've hurt somebody's feelings. It makes me feel bad. I'm probably too empathetic, to be honest. I probably am. It's a bad choice in this context. Thanks for backing me up. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's true. Marvel Spotlight is where Marvel. I stuttered that one out. That is where Spider Woman debuted. her powers are mid. Yeah, that's how they should have gone. I'm perfect. Well, you might be biased. Anyway, well, what are they going to do with her instead? By the way, what are they going to do with her instead? I mean, we've already seen her in Daredevil. We know that she can fight, but are they going to say that she has no powers? I mean, I guess that's okay. I'm not going to say that breaks the character if she still looks and acts and can fight like Maya Lopez in the comics, but it's a little strange. It's a little strange. Oh, good. I can finally start the show. Been waiting an hour and 11 minutes. That's the thing. Like, like sometimes adaptations need changes. And if somebody says, I changed this because the core theme of the story, in my opinion, is this, and I needed to make this adjustment to better suit that story, I can go with stuff like that. I don't need it to be the exact comic every time. I don't. I like to be surprised a little bit sometimes. But if you have no respect for it, like, why not just do something else? Just explain to me, like, have a good explanation for why you're deciding to do something different. Don't just say, oh, I thought that was stupid, so I didn't do it. It's like, well, if you thought it was stupid, like, why are you adapting it anyway? Who knows? I do understand that sometimes you have to make changes. I'm not always against a change. Look, I didn't prefer the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man having organic web shooters, but that did not break the movie for me. They did not want to like dwell as much on his science nerd background. Okay, so whatever. It didn't break the movie for me, but but if you came in and you were like, oh yeah, spider powers are lame, I'm gonna have this version of Spider-Man have super strength and he can fly. I'd be like, wait, what? We'll see. We'll see. Attack on Titan. I know that this is popular. I haven't really gotten into it, but this is just an indication of how popular it is. It crashed its own streaming service. So the finale came to Crunchyroll this past week, and on Saturday, the entire site crashed. This is Crunchyroll's own like sort of tweet to talk about it. They said, our site is experiencing intermittent issues, but we're working hard to resolve things quickly. We really appreciate your patience. Here's what's weird about that, folks. This happened to them back in January. They got a new batch of episodes in January, beginning the final season. They've broken it up, and it crashed the site back then. And they weren't ready for how much anticipation there was for the finale. Guys, come on. Thank you again for the super chat, Rebellious Monkey. I'm even using the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way book to help me out. And the reason why I'm copying their style is because I don't have my own style at this moment. I only want some skills. That's awesome. Again, to develop your own style just comes with time. My recommendation is to take some life drawing courses. They're really fun. You could do something like Dr. Sketchy's, or even just like, go to a park bench or get on a subway car and just draw the people you see as fast as possible. You're really going to develop your own style and get some solid fundamentals. It's just that's just good for illustration. But how to draw comics the Marvel way gives you a lot of great tips. So that's awesome. I hope you enjoy it. Hello. The attack on servers. Boy, is that correct. Let's see. To be honest, let's see. Crunchyroll crashes often, and they don't have any intention to change that. Ouch. No, you know what? I didn't have How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way when I was younger. I'm trying to think. I remember learning to draw some of my earliest stuff, and I'm talking like, just over toddler age, with books by a guy called Ed Emberley. And what he would do is just have you draw like, a circle, and then the next step would be draw this triangle, and you'd come up with sort of stick men and trees and houses and stuff. I do remember learning that. Other than that, it was just I always liked drawing, and you just take a little bit from everything you see around you. I know that I look back, for instance, if you watch that episode of 10-year-old Chris's a Transformers comic book, it's very much based on cartoon logic. Lots of people falling off cliffs or having a bomb fall into their hand and blowing them up, like really Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry type stuff. So I was definitely inspired by cartoons. Thank you, Mian Yan. Here's a super chat. I'll say, could you say the following? My peoples, where you at? Into front, into back. Killer bees on attack. No, I can't say that. Yeah. For some reason, it's really tied into my head. When I hear that Wu-Tang song, I can't forget MTV's ad that had Donald Trump going, I really like that video with the bees in it. They just used to play that as a little ad bumper all the time. Oh, it always comes to my head. It hurts. It hurts. It goes well. Anyway, Crunchyroll, maybe look into upgrading your servers. Look at that cutie. Oh, here's another super chat. Rebellious Monkey again. Wow, you don't have to keep super chatting, but thank you for the support. Basically, Mark Bagley is my main influence, but I'm just copying John, Sal, and Ron just to get some experience until I get to Mark eventually. Good luck. That's cool. Mark Bagley famously won a How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way contest to break in. So that's really cool. I am for the children. No, this is One Piece obviously has had a big year this year. They're moving into the final arc of the manga. The anime is still a hit, had that huge movie Red last year, and the new Netflix live action show landed really big. So this is just one more thing. Luffy, Monkey D. Luffy now has a balloon, and they went with his classic look, not his new sort of Gear 5 upgrade. Classic look, having him use his like rubber powers to make a huge, big fist here. Gum Gum Punch, right? Gum Gum Rocket or something. These are volunteers, and they had a balloon test this past weekend to get ready for Macy's 97th annual Thanksgiving parade. 97 they've been doing 97 years they've been doing balloons. It's not a huge balloon. It's what they call, I think, they're mid-sized balloons, but they have a few new ones every year to keep it fresh. And so this year One Piece is going to have a Luffy balloon. I saw a picture of it. It's based on comics. I just thought I'd share it. I am now old enough that I don't get up early enough to really sit down and just watch the Macy's Thanksgiving parade. But I will tell you, if it is on and I'm awake, I cannot look away. I love that thing. I don't know. I love it. It just puts me in a really happy place. I mean, it's already Thanksgiving Day. I'm usually going to be having a nice dinner, seeing some family. So I don't know. I know a bunch of you aren't necessarily in America, so you don't celebrate Thanksgiving. Therefore, you probably don't watch the Macy's parade, but it is a humongous long parade in New York. They have floats, huge balloons. I'm sure you know that much. And then they'll have Broadway shows like come by and like sing a number or something. It's fun. It's fun. Bet it would be neat to go to the 100th anniversary parade. Yeah, probably. Most of these people that like carry the balloons are volunteers from Macy's stores. That's my understanding anyway. Not from America. Love your channel. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's really kind of you. That's really kind of you. In 2019, I think it was, Chrissy and I did Thanksgiving in Japan, and it was almost confusing because we were like, should we celebrate Thanksgiving on the Thursday here in Japan where it's, not really a holiday, but that's a day before, or do we celebrate it on Friday when everybody back home is celebrating, but that's still not really a thing here? And we found that there were some hotels that specialize in creating a big American Thanksgiving meal for expats like us. It was kind of cool. Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. The National Dog Show after the parade. That's awesome. Yes, great point, Rick. Sorry, that is true. Superman, like within just I think he'd only been out for what, maybe 3 years or something, and he was turned into a balloon for the Macy's parade. Just sort of spoke to how quickly Superman became popular. Superman became popular very quickly, very quickly. Huge hit right out of the gate. Couple other people are agreeing with Eugene that they like the dog show. That's nice. Yep, Spidey had a float. Oh, you know what I do every year on Thanksgiving Day? I share my favorite moment from the Macy's Thanksgiving parade, and it would probably been around 1990. I'm just guessing there. It was within a year or two of that. And Marvel Comics had a float. So they had like a thing that just sort of looked like parts of New York City that could like be interacted with, and they had a bunch of people in costumes, Doctor Doom, Hulk, Wolverine, Doctor Strange, people like that. And RoboCop, because Marvel Comics had the rights to make RoboCop comics at that time. But they basically had this whole sort of battle between the heroes and the villains, and Enchantress is kicking Doctor Strange or something, and the Hulk is going a little nuts and knocking over a building, and Captain America is like, Hulk, knock that off. And behind all of this, the music that's playing is from Back to the Future, inexplicably. And there's a point where Doctor Doom is thrown into like some electronics on the wall and he's getting electrocuted. RoboCop just all of a sudden like comes out of a door and turns off the electricity to free Doctor Doom. That was part of the whole thing. It's just a video that always cracks me up. Every Thanksgiving I share it on social media. I love it. Okay. Krython looked it up. It was 1989. I guess 1990. I feel like that's pretty damn close. I'm proud that I remembered that. Alan Silvestri did the score for Avengers, foreshadowing. That's true. I love the Back to the Future theme. Don't get me wrong. But the Back to the Future theme is pretty memorable. It's not like just, oh, here was some music. It was in this really obscure movie called Back to the Future. Oh, and it was 1989, which meant that was the year that Back to the Future 2 and 3 came out in the summer and the winter. So like people were definitely exposed to that song a lot, but you're seeing all the Marvel characters fight to it. So yeah, I'd pull it up, but the music would get me claimed. Like, let me see if I can pull it up without the music real quick. I'm just gonna say because now I gotta. I'm gonna take this off for a minute and rejigger some things. I've got it. I'm gonna do it without the sound. Let me turn the sound off. I'm gonna put on my headphones so that I can be sure that I'm doing this right. We're gonna look at this. Let me add things. Present screen Where is it? Okay, come on. Hold on, I'm having trouble like finding it. That's not gonna work. All right, this will work. So we've got Doctor Strange there pulling Captain America out of an actual comic book. So we're just sort of breaking the fourth wall right away. But look, classic Wolverine, and you never get to see the Enchantress or anything like that. I think that the float here looks pretty cool in terms of like what they've got to jump around in. I think Wolverine just jumped into a sewer. There's Magneto, but oh yeah, look, Captain America can just push Magneto down. Really powerful. There's Doctor. They just sort of point at each other. This is hilarious. Power Man shows up. Look at them just sort of chase each other. I know Captain America's strong, but he'd be breaking his fist punching Doctor Doom. Yep, Marvel. See, okay, so he's getting electrocuted. Look, there's RoboCop saving Doctor Doom, and then just going like, "See ya." That's basically all I wanted to show you. The White Queen has Silly String, but who would have expected the White Queen or Silver Surfer or Daredevil? I don't know. I wouldn't have expected any of that, so I got a kick out of that. Hopefully that was fun for you guys. Pretty weird, right? I definitely did not expect RoboCop to save Doctor Doom. And just imagine all of that with the Back to the Future theme blaring, just blaring. Bum, 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 that's what it sounds like. All right, we'll get back to wrapping up the news. Thank you for giving me a moment to take a tangent there. That was fun for me. There we go. The most followed TikToker has joined an NFT comic. I know that this is the news that you guys have been waiting for. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I don't watch a lot of TikTok. I don't know if it's KB LeMay or KB Lame. I don't know. Probably, odds are one of you have watched his stuff, because we're talking about a guy with 162 million followers. That's not nothing. It's almost as important as me, Mr. Comics. So, Rebel Studios recently had a successful Kickstarter for an NFT-powered digital comic anthology called Icon. The exact technical aspects, I really couldn't explain to you there, folks. I really couldn't. All I know is you're paying for a digital comic, okay? We'll keep it simple. We'll keep it simple. Some of the creators are our names. I mean, Jay Lee, Tom DeFalco, Jim Chung, Ron Friends, a bunch more that you've heard of. Letters like Richard Starkings, colorists like Pat Olaf. Really important. Really important. You've watched his videos. Did I pronounce his name right? Is it like Lame or is it LeMay? Which one is it? Tell me. That guy is hilarious. Okay, good. A bunch of you guys know. But yeah, he isn't writing or drawing the comic. He's just one of the main characters. So maybe he's just sort of endorsing it. He is, and I had to put that in quotes because I don't know how else to describe it. He is a character called King Chrome, which I guess takes place in the future, and this leader realizes that like everybody's sort of mindless drones, and he's going to free them. I gotta say, like NFTs have crashed really, really hard. There have been a few articles lately about how NFTs across the board are next to worthless. Whoever got caught with them last did not really make money on them. It's kind of over for it, but yeah. But somehow this is an NFT powered comic. This is embarrassing. I I don't know, he says he's always wanted to be a superhero. He's got this newspaper here that he's like reading, and it says like, King Chrome, and then he just sort of like shrugs like, what can I say? And I think it like says I've always wanted to be a superhero in his description, and then he trips and falls into his gigantic pool. It's not the worst. I couldn't have come up with a better way to hype it than that. I just don't understand a lot of this, which I know makes me sound old. And I'm the one like presenting the news. But I swear, I went to the Kickstarter and tried to read the definition of what this was. I watched his video a few times and tried to see like how what does it mean that he is King Chrome? Like, what creatively did he add to this? And I have to admit, I'm sorry, guys, I just couldn't figure it all out. So I'm passing this on in case like one of you were like, this is what it means, but doesn't seem like I'm getting that. So we'll see. Wait, I like this one by Rob Irizarry. 5 NFTs, any NFTs, equal 1 Beanie Baby at the current exchange rate. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I know more about this than him at this point. What's an NFT? Okay, here's my best explanation, okay? NFT stands for non-fungible token. It just means that it's not a physical thing, okay? It's like you get a digital token, and that token can be something like a link to something else. So you could have it like, link to a page of news, or link to a pass that got you into a restaurant, or link to a digital comic. It's a unique code, and it gets entered in a log that's sort of like public. And so you can buy and trade it since it's technically unique. But because it's digital and you're looking at like, like that token on a screen, that it's typically represented by, some sort of procedurally generated image. And someone could just like right click and copy and paste. Like you're not supposed to, but yeah. That is a really good observation, Jamilin. Yeah, he's reading a newspaper in a short promoting an NFT. That is a little bit of a disconnect, isn't it? That is so funny. They used his likeness for the character, and he is in on it. Okay. So he's granting his likeness. Got it. That actually makes plenty of sense. I just hadn't thought that through or seen that, but that makes sense. It's crypto with a JPEG. That's fair. Yeah. Being a YouTuber, when NFTs started blowing up, like I was doing YouTube before they were a thing, and I'm doing it now when they're pretty much dead, in my opinion. Oh my God, did I get so many offers to advertise for them, or to do interviews for them. And they're like, no, we're doing something new. It's comics, it's a link to a comic. And I was just like, I don't care. I just don't believe in this long term. I'm sorry. It's not for me. And some of these people just did not like getting told no. I got so many repeat emails. Maybe someday down the road, when even more time has passed, maybe I'll bring some of them up, because I don't think I deleted them all. Some of them were just crazy. Like, like they're like, we're going to be bigger than Marvel and DC combined. We're going to have superheroes that, and I'm like, okay, stop right there. You just said you're doing superheroes. There's like, how many superheroes do we have out there at this point? Right. NFTs are not technically the JPEG. They're the link to where the JPEG might be. Yep. It's confusing. It's not easy. Let's wrap up some news. I think he did. I think a bunch of comic creators gave it a shot. If they got paid for their efforts, I'm not against that. I would just say that it was not a good investment. I did not want to endorse something towards guys like you. Like a lot of you here are saying, like, what is it? Still, like, it's been years and people are saying, like, I don't get exactly what it is. But if I was sitting here going like, but this is one that I endorse, and then you paid money and then you lost money in it, I would say that you're justifiably mad at me. And I just thought that that was the way it was going, and I just don't, you know, I'll advertise here and there, you know, you wanna give me, like, a Factor meal? Well, that's a physical thing that, like, we need. We need food. I can eat it and judge if it's quality or not and if it's a fair price. But, like, an NFT, no. Couple Americans won some awards at a recent Italian comics festival, so I was just gonna mention that. The award ceremony for the, and I don't know if it's pronounced Luca or Lucca because I don't really know Italian. Even though I've been there, I just didn't learn it. Anyway, their event is called Comics and Games. So for 2023, it was held at the Teatro del Giglio in Lucca. And the Yellow Kid Master of Comics, which is their Hall of Fame award, went to Frank Miller. So what will happen now is he will draw a self-portrait, and that gets put in a gallery of self-portraits of other people who have won this in the past, which they call the Uffizi galleries. Also, the Gran Guinigi Best Script went to Tom King for Human Target, published in Europe by Panini Comics, originally from DC Comics. Sounds like an excuse for a trip to Italy. If I was going to go to Italy for a comic anything, it would definitely be to go to that Lake Como Arts Festival that they started last year, because Lake Como looks like one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And by the way, yeah, like Randy said what I was just going to say, there are so many Italian comics creators getting into the American comics market right now. And Italy has had a long, amazing history of making comics. Fumetti. But it's great. Oh, thank you. The city is pronounced Lucca. Lucca. Thank you. It's Luca in The Godfather for what it's worth. It's worth a lot. Thank you. Thanks, guys. I got to do the Italian hand gestures so that I can be stereotypical. Is that what you're saying, Beowulf? I don't know, but you know what? Frank Miller does his own thing these days. His art is definitely not the same as what it was in the 80s when, like people loved him. At the same time, I think he's come back around a little to where I respect some of what he posts on social media. Like he did a Spider-Man that I thought was pretty cool, to be honest. But, he's at a point where he can just sort of draw however he feels. It is what it is. I'd love to go to there. I'm trying to remember. There's some sort of huge comic art museum in Italy, and I can't remember where it is right now. Oh, well, it might come to me later. I'll just keep moving. Two more pieces of news. One, there's something called Comic Books for the Troops, which is a sister organization to Comic Books for Kids, which has been around for several years. And they're a 501c nonprofit. Their whole goal is just to send comic books to all of the military branches. This is going to be their second year. They're going to host their event over Veterans Day weekend. That's coming up in a week, November 10th through 12th, in which they're either willing to collect direct donations on their website, or they've got a FAQ where comic book retailers have different ways that they could donate either comics or, like a certain percentage of sales or something like that. It's a nice idea. Over the last year, they donated over 125,000 comics to service members. Nice. I like spreading the word of comics. They've got a lot of nice pictures on their site of service members carrying long boxes and disseminating comics. So I heard about an excellent Italian series called Diabolique, which I own some of and is really worth checking out. I've always wanted to check out Diabolique. It looks interesting. Just need to find it in English, but I would really like to read it. Soldiers have a lot of time to read. Well, I think all service members do, airmen and seamen and Marines, they all have plenty of time. Coast Guard. Yeah, I think all the service members have a lot of downtime. And you know what? I mean, do I always agree with, like the military industrial complex? Maybe not. Definitely not. But in general, if somebody is like willing to put their life on the line to protect, our Constitution and stuff, of course I respect that. I really do. I really do. Even if that person and I may have different politics, of course I respect the hell out of them for what they're willing to do. And there are tremendous good aspects of our military here and there. They do employ a lot of scientists and engineers who figure out solutions to things. The Navy is always looking for clean energy. They don't want to like rely on nuclear powered subs for their whole life. They look into clean energy options, and they do studies on what pollution does to the world. Um, I don't know. There are some great things that these service members do, and and I respect them. Yeah. So if the idea of giving them some comics for their downtime, I love that idea. I love that idea. Let's see. Do Diamond, Lunar, uh, Penguin, Random House, etc. distribute to BXs at all? Dude, they must. They must. I know that a lot of service members have told me that they can get comics on base, so they must. But I wonder what that becomes for, like, um, our bases in different parts of the world, like, in Germany and South Korea and Japan, things like that. Turkey. I don't know. I wonder. That's an interesting question. Huh. I'll have to like do some research on that. That's a really interesting question. Last piece of news I've got. Jock, artist I really respect. His book Gone has sold out. Distillery announced that issue 1 of Jock's sci-fi book Gone sold out on the distributor level through both Diamond and Lunar. I misspelled Diamond, sorry. The first mistake I've ever done on this show. Wow. And you were here to see it. Consider yourselves lucky. This is a sci-fi book where basically like most of the world is super poor. And the best hope you have is to just sort of like get work on a luxury starship, let alone be the people that just spend their time up in these luxury starships. But Abby is the main character. She's a poor 13-year-old. She stows away on a luxury spaceship, and it goes from there. The creator-owned book, if you're curious, that is still super likely to be at your comic book store. Because while it says it's sold out on the distributor level, that doesn't mean that it is sold out of all issues in stores. It just means that the first printing sold out. So good for them. Oh, I actually have a copy of Gone, but I've been catching up on so many books I haven't read it yet. I didn't see it yet. I don't know. I think that they must still sell comics at the PX and the BX. I don't know for sure. Oh, here's somebody that's got some insight. At the BX, they have multi-issue polybags, kind of like you would see at Walmart, Dollar Tree. Really? Who's distributing that, I wonder? I wonder who the distributor is that's like packaging that way and getting it there. That is really interesting. Yeah, so this is a creator-owned book that I guess he's both writing and drawing. It usually does mostly just the art, but could be really cool. If I see it in a store, I'm definitely going to pick it up. But that's everything I've got there. Tell you what, let me turn on this light. I'm going to turn off this extra light because I only need so much light. Going to turn on an extra camera, and we're going to take a look at the comics that came out this week. Not too many, and then I'm going to do some drawing because that's fun. Bear with me while I add this on the fly. Present extra camera and choose that one. And you've got a nice shot of my coffee. So let's move some stuff around here. Some pens. And here come the comics. There we go. We're getting there. We're getting there. I'm going to prop this up under something. Bear with me. I'm going to grab a box here and put this at a little bit of an angle so that it's a little less shiny. How's that? Maybe still over here a little bit more. Okay. I only have like 4 comics to talk about, okay? So I'll go through this pretty quickly. I don't want to just recap them. I just want to give a recommendation or say what I liked about them. Ultimate Universe 1 came out, and this is our first real look at the Ultimate Universe. There was Ultimate Invasion. That was a mini series which sort of explained where this new version of the Ultimate Universe came from. This is our first story in it proper moving forward. You don't need to have read anything before this. This is definitely the beginning of things. That said, I understand the marketing advantage of using the word ultimate, but since this is supposed to be a fresh concept for new readers potentially, does calling it the Ultimate Universe ultimately make sense? Or is that confusing, do you think, potentially, where people are like, oh, yeah, I remember Ultimate Spider Man with Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pichelli, or Mark Miller. And I wonder, maybe they shouldn't have called it the Ultimate Universe this time, because it isn't the same. Just to be clear, it is not the same. This is a new, fresh take on things, and this is essentially sort of the gathering of people that will form the Avengers. Um, this guy that looks like Doctor Doom in a blue cloak, that's actually this version of Reed Richards. He was forced to wear this suit by, I'll just leave it as a bad guy. Okay. It's dense continuity that you don't necessarily need yet. The Iron Man in this is Tony Stark, but he's calling himself Iron Lad because his father, Howard Stark, was Iron Man before him. So he calls himself Iron Lad. And in the mainstream Marvel comics, we know that Iron Lad becomes Kang the Conqueror. So is that destiny? I don't know. They free Thor from who's been imprisoned, and Sif is the jail keeper. Not that she hates Thor or anything, but I guess Thor did something to get in trouble with his father. Anyway, so we get them all together. They're the main guys, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor. They've got Captain America is on ice, but it's not as simple as just thawing it. They need to like figure out how to get him out of here without hurting him. It's interesting. It's got some different stuff, and essentially, what becomes their mission is this: Reed Richards knows that the guy who there's a guy called the Maker, okay, who was from the original Ultimate Universe. He's an evil Reed Richards. He's been defeated so far, but what he did is he created this universe where he went through time and took out the catalyst for many people becoming a superhero. This is why in this world, Howard Stark is dead, why Captain America is on ice, why Thor is in jail, and why there doesn't seem to be, say, a Spider-Man or anything in this world. Because he went through time and took these catalysts. These guys break into his vaults to steal these catalysts. But the Maker has set up many superpowered beings as rulers of different parts of the world, including Captain Britain, not a good guy in this. The Hulk, not a good guy in this. And some serious stuff happens, for instance, Thor gets a sword through his chest, which isn't enough to kill a god, but it's also not nothing. It's interesting. While Maker is gone, all these sort of superheroes that he had set up to rule various fiefdoms throughout the world, they decide to set up Tony Stark as a terrorist. They're gonna frame him. It's some interesting ideas. It's some very interesting ideas. Isn't Spider-Man out of this universe because Miles gave a pocket hamburger to Molecule Man? That has nothing to do with this, but interesting idea. But these guys are going to basically get those catalysts, and the world was meant to have superheroes. So it's going to be changing pretty fast, I think. It's going to be changing pretty fast. I picked up Scott Snyder and Dan Panosian's book Canary, which is a horror western. And for my money, Dan Panosian doesn't do enough interior pencils these days. He's incredible. He's incredible. There's both an attention to detail and a looseness to the line art that really makes it pop. Scott Snyder has an interesting main character here, where there's a marshal investigating some murders, and he starts out as a real son of a bitch. He's famous because he's been in dime store novels because he solved a crime years ago, but he's not friendly or anything. He does not want the celebrity or anything like that. Anyway, it's very creepy when people go crazy and get killed. To investigate that, this lawman is out on a very desolate, like small Western town. He gets hooked up with a scientist. Let me find him. So there's a trio of heroes. A trio of heroes we get introduced to. This is this gentleman. Is a scientist, but pretty much only gets to work at the university. Doesn't get to go out much because he's a black guy, and this was like the 1800s. So you could get an education here and there, but you weren't going to get treated well by society. But this lawman does treat him with respect. And finally, there's a woman in town who actually arranged for the marshal to get sent out here to investigate the murders. Her father was very wealthy and like owned the bar, and she seems a lot smarter than the average person in town. She seems a lot more with it and plugged in to what's really happening, even though there is sort of a mayor who's just trying to get his town to be famous and isn't really plugged into what's happening. There is some really creepy villain stuff in here that I'm not really showing because I don't want to spoil the horror aspects of it. Yeah, Dan Panosian did the color on it, and the painted skies are wild. Let's just take a quick look at that too, because you're right. He has no problem sharing with us some of the textures of the brushes. And I think that it works. That could be distracting if it was too much, but it works really well. Yeah, you're commenting on how you love all that yellow. It really helps make it feel like it's dry. Or this scene at night where the sun is setting. And the marshal is trying to find out about some boy who maybe killed his teacher, and the whole family is a little bit of a cult, maybe, or not a cult, because they're not like the evil ones. They're more like they keep to themselves, and they're all armed, and it's a dangerous situation, and these red skies make it seem extra dangerous. It's good. It's pretty good. I'm curious to see where it goes. Here's one that's like, I wouldn't recommend to everybody, although it is pretty good. What do I mean by that? Spider Boy. Possibly not the most necessary book now that we have somebody like Miles Morales and we've got, various Spider Girls and Spider Women. But it's not a bad character. I will say that. It's just that this is aimed at a bit of a younger audience. In the last Spider-Verse thing, it was revealed that there's always been this kid, or not always, but for several years, there's a kid called Spider-Boy who's Spider-Man's sidekick, but no one remembers him. And so we're starting to remember him, like the main characters are. In this, he and Spider-Man are going up against one of his enemies, which is a guy named Gutterball. So we've got like some sort of like B-level villains, but it is kind of funny. It's a charming character who was like an orphan that got experimented on. That's what gave him his spider powers. But when he uses his spider powers, he looks like a monster, and so that's why people are scared of him. Maybe you can see it in this. He's got like extra eyes and like a mouth with fangs. So he's not necessarily as sweet looking as Spider-Man, and his big bad enemy is Madame Monstrosity, who does she just splices together animals and stuff to create new enemies. And he's only supposed to be something like 8 or 10. He's supposed to be pretty young. He goes up in this against he must be related to 8-Ball, Gutterball. Does he wear a spider diaper? Yeah. It's got a few emotional beats to it. One of the enemies he goes up against used to be one of his friends at the orphanage that Madame Monstrosity experimented on. She merged this poor kid with both an elephant and a rhinoceros. The art is good. Paco Medina is a good artist. The storytelling is like aimed a little younger. You know, the stakes are a little lower, but they need to be. You can't be throwing an 8-year-old into the same situations you can easily throw Spider-Man into. You know, it is, and there are people that watch out for him, but he has some pretty amazing powers. I don't know. It's good. It just, I think, skews readership wise a little younger than what interests me. But I can read this and respect it. It's got good art. It's got a good character and a mystery behind him, and some good supporting characters that we're slowly getting introduced to. It's not bad. We'll see. The last thing I read this week was the latest issue of The Sacrificers, but I was actually behind from my travels. So I actually read issues 2, 3, and 4. This was the one that came out all at once. It's actually a really nice reading experience to get that much story all at once. Boy, there's a lot to break down in terms of this world. It's a fantasy world, okay? And there are gods of various things, and they have the people of the world give up one of their children as a sacrifice once a generation, and they drink their essence. They kill them. But the main character we see is, well, there's a couple main characters, I should say. There's a daughter of the main sort of sun god, but she is a bit of a rebel. So we feel like she might have an actual moral compass compared to her father and the other gods, who are very decadent and uncaring. And there is also one of the titular sacrifices, who is a pigeon man. This is a world full of all sorts of animal people. And that pigeon guy has not been killed yet. I feel like he's based on a homing pigeon, as in, you know, like a pigeon can always find its way home. So maybe he's going to go on an odyssey and find his way home someday. I don't know. The art is great. Max Fiumara. You know, I fell behind on 7 to Eternity a few issues in, and I keep meaning to at some point pick up the trade paperbacks and read it, because I've never really been disappointed with a Rick Remender book. Some of them I like more than others, but I tend to really like his work. So I am biased. Let me put that out there. If you've read a Rick Remender book, you probably know if you like it or not. But what I like about it is that he tends to think through a character arc for the main character. He's usually got a theme for each book, whether that's dealing with depression, or dealing with being somebody that's left behind, or dealing with, you know, various emotional issues. I don't know. There's always something, you know, like Uncanny X-Force was dealing with, is it good to proactively hunt down supervillain killers, or does that not actually get you ahead in life? And, you know, like that came to some interesting conclusions for characters like Deadpool and Psylocke and Wolverine. That really went some interesting places. And he tends to find unique and interesting ways for people to use their abilities or powers, sometimes in conjunction with them, with each other. I will say, Righteous Thirst for Vengeance wasn't my favorite of the stuff that he's made. It's very low dialogue, sort of more action oriented. I think it probably would read a lot better as like a full story in trade paperback form. Might work better as, it might be a case where it might have worked better as like film or TV, to be honest. Because you don't super get into the character's head. Wasn't bad. I'm just saying it wasn't my favorite of the stuff that I've read by him. I do recommend stuff like Low. A lot of his Marvel work, to be honest. I don't know. All sorts of amazing stuff. No, I haven't read either of those. They look interesting. It's so hard to know what to read and what not to. I just realized I did also pick up some manga this week. I read the latest volume 8 of Kaiju number 8. Doesn't really focus too much on the main character. Focuses mostly on the second lead, Reno. I think his name is Reno Ichikawa. And But this is a fun world where, people train to be hunters of kaiju, and sometimes they can even harvest kaiju parts to make powerful suits and weapons. The main character can actually transform into a kaiju with super strength and stuff, and still have his own mind. It's really cool. Oh, Fear Agent, Deadly Class. But don't know why those didn't pop into my head. Those were both really strong ones. Really strong. Yeah, Fear Agent was really good. Joshua, you're in for a good ride. You're in for a good ride. This is also kind of a funny book, by the way. Kaiju number 8 has a good sense of humor here and there. Doesn't undercut the drama. It's just that it's mostly character based here and there. Like characters can, because they're fairly young people that get like recruited into this sort of specialized army, and so they're sometimes a little immature in different ways. It's amusing. Let's draw a little. I've got some time. I've got a little time. That took a little longer than I expected. I did a small live stream earlier this week on this channel because I learned that it was Godzilla Day. And I was like, whoa, I love Godzilla. So I had this guy, a real weirdo of a character in the Godzilla movies, Jet Jaguar. And I was like, I'm going to draw Jet Jaguar versus a kaiju. So I didn't finish it, but I did draw this on a live stream if you're curious, or mostly ink it, to be honest. Mostly it was inking. But Jet Jaguar giving a high knee to Gigan. But I've also been drawing a couple weeks ago on this channel and haven't had time to do it anywhere else. Like I'm drawing a cover, a blank Transformers cover for a friend. So let's work on that a little bit. I know. Yeah, next year is Godzilla's 70th anniversary. I don't know about the Godzilla manga from the 80s. Hello, JD Simpson. Thanks for jumping in. Wow. There was a Godzilla manga? That's very interesting. I did not know that. I did not know that. I took off my glasses, which maybe looks weird to you guys, but I can see better up close without them. So, yeah, got to do that. I guess just a product of age. Eyesight just slowly degenerating. Slowly. Frustrating. Anybody watch anything good lately? Or read any good comics that I didn't pick up? Always looking for recommendations. Did you know Jet was a contest-winning submission? I did. I talk about that briefly in the live stream. Yes, I watched the first episode of season 2 of Invincible. I meant to talk about that earlier. I had seen the Adam Eve special. What was that? Like July that came out? It was really good. But Invincible is back, and they do a few key subtle changes to the exact way that some of the characters act. I think it helps make the character of Angstrom Levy a little bit more tragic. Angstrom Levy, it's really not a spoiler to say that he's basically a villain in the Invincible series, but the first episode really helps explain who he at least was meant to be in this world. And it makes it a little sad what happens to him. You can relate to him just a little bit anyway. Yeah, I liked it. I liked it so far. I think that the animation's a notch better. The designs are great, but I'm biased. That's Corey Walker designing most of the like main characters anyway. and then Nate Belgard designing a bunch of the supporting characters. So those are two guys that have actually drawn the comics that are some of the heads for the animation. Pretty awesome stuff. You know what? I'm going to try something I just thought of. I'm going to bust out a brush pen that I picked up in Japan and see. Well, actually, I look at it and it may require some fiddling to use. Oh, cool. A super chat. My new weekly when I can be on. Gold, silver, bronze request. I loved your Bendis list last week. This week, your top 3 Batman sidekicks with IDs. My top 3. I'm thinking. I would say. I'm trying to decide because the first one's going to either be Dick Grayson or Tim Drake, and I'm trying to decide which of those two guys I like more. I think maybe this is blasphemy. I think I like Tim Drake just a notch more for some reason. Maybe it's just that he started out a little nerdier and really made the proactive decision to try to be Robin as compared to Dick Grayson, having tragedy befall him and Bruce Wayne sort of like, thrust the mantle upon him in a sense. So I think I'd go for number 1 and 2, Tim Drake and Dick Grayson. And then for number 3, all of my number 3s are going to be fairly distant. There's so many. Because you could say Azrael, you could say Catwoman, you could say Huntress, you could say Batwoman, are all sort of sidekicks. I think I'll probably go with Damian Wayne. Damian Wayne for number 3. It's interesting seeing Bruce have an actual biological and younger son, and feeling the responsibility for that. That's interesting to me. I'll have to hook this up later. I have to put the ink in this pen, and it'll take a while to get ready, so I won't use that today right now. You could choose Batmite. I think Batmite could count as a sidekick. Not a one that Bruce Wayne willingly wants, but yeah. Dick Grayson is great. In a lot of ways, he's the best superhero in the whole DC universe. And some of it was that he was raised that way, but he's just got the best sort of natural athleticism, trained by the best, very experienced at a younger age than most superheroes, and has a lot of inherent compassion. And compassion's important. Compassion's really important. I think that compassion is what makes Wonder Woman one of the trickier characters to tackle properly sometimes, because that's a really defining characteristic for Wonder Woman, to be compassionate, to like be more patient than you or I would be in a certain situation, and to extend that sort of courtesy and forgiveness to people. She's just, you could be the worst person in the world and do some horrible things to Diana Prince, and she's still more likely to be ready to forgive you and help you on a path to redemption than anybody else. But that can be tricky to get right, to say like, no, this story was so big that even Diana Prince won't forgive that person, but she would most of the time she would. When she's written well, I think that Wonder Woman's very interesting. Very interesting. Instead, I busted out just a Pigma brush pen, which isn't my favorite brush pen, but is fine for these purposes. I should be able to do a good job with it. Thanks for the fun question. Sometimes top lists are very hard for me to come up with on the spot. There are things that I want to give a thoughtful and insightful response to, and it doesn't always immediately come to me when somebody says like, who's your top favorite artist from Italy? And I'd be like, I gotta think about that one. Yeah, long delayed. Dan Slott's 10th Doctor story finally comes out. I hope it's good. I do like Doctor Who. The canonicity of Doctor Who comics is questionable. Doesn't necessarily have to be that important, but I feel like the show rarely brings in things from the comics, but sometimes it does. There, Absalom Doc, the Dalek hunter, has had a visual reference on the show. I made an episode about him, if you're curious. Some of the very first work by artist Steve Dillon, if I'm remembering right. What else? Coming up in like a couple weeks, there's going to be an episode based on the Fourth Doctor comic book story drawn by Brian Bolland, the Star Beast. And to my knowledge, that's the first time a comic book story has ever been adapted outright for the show. So that's kind of cool too. I'm looking forward to that. Oh, nice. Nice. Um, I really admire the Hernandez brothers. They're incredible. I'm glad they had a good interview. Yeah, it's more than just Beep the Meep. I think it's a flat out, sort of update adaptation of the full Star Beast story. Are you going to pick up the High Roller? It's been a while since Rick Remender made a superhero comic. Absolutely. You think I'm going to pass on like Andy Samberg working on a comic book? No way. Rick has said that he'll jump onto this show at some point in a few weeks. We're going to have him for like a few minutes at the top of one of these shows. We'll ask him about the High Roller and the Sacrificers. Just going to be sort of a shorter interview, just something just for fun to kick off the show. But Rick has said he's willing to do that. I'm sorry. I did say Brian Bolland. I did know that it was Dave Gibbons because I actually do own it. Thank you, though, for the correction, ChemDog. I just totally misspoke because I'm focusing on what's right in front of me. Thank you very much. I appreciate the correction on that. Dopey. Short like the Higgins interview? That's true. That was meant to be like 10 minutes and we did more like 30, but yeah, like that. Hey, Randy, you're on. Randy's a good friend of mine. I love Randy. He's great and he does make some good comics. One of them that he's made is called Bullet Adventures, about a super speedster character. And if I'm remembering right, Randy, please speak up right now. I believe, are you launching a Kickstarter for sort of a trade paperback collecting the first 4 issues on that? Am I remembering that right? Um, please speak up because I would love to know if I've got that right and plug your work. I don't think Rick was super involved with American Crime, but it was a shame when his show adaptation of Deadly Class got canceled after just 1 season because I thought that was pretty darn strong. Yeah. Volume 1 launches tomorrow. Go ahead and tell people where they can find that then, right? If they just go to like a Kickstarter and look up what? Bullet Adventures, look up Altruist Comics, your imprint. What would be the best way to find that? Because I really do like Bullet Adventures. Issues 1 through 4 plus the original one shot. So if you haven't read it, I recommend Randy's comic. It's got good artwork. It's a fun story. It's classic superhero drama. Oh, Cassandra Cain would have been a good option. You're right. Well, you're right. I had a guy, but like my store. You guys know I sell used cars and stuff, and of course we buy stuff too. Although we kind of specialize in stuff that's just like your run of the. Well, we've got luxury and nice cars, but we generally only sell cars on our front lot that are about 10 years old, right? But we'll buy anything because we also run our own auto auction every week. So we can still make an offer on anything. It's just that we don't always specialize in stuff that's been like heavily modified or things like that. But we had a guy bring in an interesting car to get appraised this week. It was a 1981 DeLorean. And of course, the DeLorean, if you don't know, was only 81 to 83, I think. It was only like 3 years. It was very brief company. But it is a unique, cool-looking vehicle. I don't think, it was not the most reliable vehicle, that's for sure. And I don't think because of that it would have been very popular if it hadn't been for the fact that it was featured so prominently in the Back to the Future movie. But it was. And so it's iconic. And it was cool. It was in great shape. Only 13,000 miles on it. Those gull-wing doors. Let's see. Thank you, Chi-Chi. Does that mean dad? Is that like you using that like the Japanese word? Chi-Chi. Thank you. Just want to say thanks for being a cool dude, Chris. This is one of the few places where I feel safe on the internet. I hope you do. Thanks for jumping in. I appreciate that. I love the idea of us having a space where we can talk about comics and we're not like likely to have people here going like, that's a terrible opinion. No, I mean, we don't have to agree on everything. We have to agree on some things. We have to agree that comics is a really amazing and versatile storytelling medium where you can tell just about any kind of a story. We have to agree on that much. But after that, we don't have to agree on everything. Thanks for being here, and thank you for the super chat. Very much appreciated. Very much appreciated. It was actually a high school nickname, but I will accept dad. In Japanese, Chichi does mean dad or father. Yeah. I forgot. I got distracted a bit back. I was like 5 to 10 minutes behind. Well, that's okay. Space Usagi Yojimbo is coming out. That's cool. I hope it goes over well, just because I like and respect Stan Sakai. He's great. Stan Sakai, he's a great guy. You know what? I am going to... yeah, I'm going to totally change how this lower piece looks. I'm going to black a bunch of stuff out here and hope that this does look right when I'm done. I'm nervous. Oh my goodness, please don't look stupid when I'm done. I think this is the right thing to do. We'll see. Hold on. I'll look at the chat in a second. I just need to make sure I finish this and that it makes sense to me. As long as it makes sense to me as the artist, it should make sense to whoever's looking at it. That's my logic, and I'm sticking to it. You can't talk me out of it. I'm done. No take backsies. Yeah, I think it looks okay. All right. All right, I'm going to have to add more black because otherwise that's not going to look right. I'm going to have to black out certain portions of this. So bear with me. I'm going to try to be bold with my decisions on what to black out. Of course, this has to be like the week where we don't have somebody like, Jim Moffat or Sean Chen in here. Andy, oh my goodness. I'm so bad at names. Why can't I have any pros in here? EJ. The nerves on display here. You madman. Sometimes you got to commit. Yes. Yes. I don't know if this is the right decision. I hope it is. Anybody else like Starscream? I think that the Transformers show really missed out by not having Starscream in season 3, at least as a regular. Just such a great foil to the villain and a great number 2 villain. The conniving nature of wanting to be in charge. Like, ambition is a really relatable personality trait. Ambition. And having a villain with ambition is just a really cool idea. Yeah, can't quite control Z this one. Chris Lotta's voice is iconic. Iconic. Have I read J. Michael Straczynski's The Madness? No, to be honest, I don't think I've even heard of that one. That one somehow just did not get on my radar. You know, I actually did not have Starscream. Yeah. I wanted him. I did eventually have a good amount of Transformers, but it was because as I got older, I started working and I was still right in that sweet spot where I had some of my own money that I could spend on something like a toy. But also, like, Transformers, like, I was starting to get older and the quality of them was going down towards the last few waves. So it's like right in the middle there. I didn't quite jump on early enough with wave 1. So I did have Optimus Prime and Megatron and stuff, but I didn't have a lot of the early ones. I was missing key characters. You know, I didn't have Starscream or Shockwave or Ironhide or Bumblebee. You know, like, I had some, but I didn't have them all. It's okay, but I really liked Transformers. Currently, there is a Starscream with Crown toy out in Walmart. Yeah, I think that they based a bunch on the movie, didn't they? The '86 movie. Trying hard to think of a villain completely devoid of ambition. It's not that. It's just that, like, you know, did some of the other villains in the show, like Thundercracker, Skywarp, heck, even Soundwave, they were pretty subservient to Megatron. But you know, Starscream wanted to be the one in charge, and you don't always get to see that, at least in the cartoons that were aimed at kids. I don't know. Starting in 5th grade, so I would have been about 10. I got a paper route, and I also started mowing lawns like maybe the next year, as well as the paper route. And then on top of that, I started babysitting like right around the time I was like 12 or 13. I kept doing all of that. And by the time I was 16, I also started a job at Walgreens as a clerk. So I was working a lot of jobs until I went to college. I also ended up ultimately with a lot of G.I. Joes. But I did also sell off all my Transformers and all my G.I. Joes, as well as most of my comics, when I moved out here to Washington 10 years ago. So I sold most of my collection off. And I miss it sometimes, but in other ways it was kind of nice to have less stuff. And I felt like the G.I. Joe and Transformers went, I know, to like homes of people that were like big collectors. So I was content. Yeah, you can't, it was too much stuff. So I was kind of glad in some ways to have an excuse to part with it. Not that I got like much money for it really, but I was content to sort of move on. Sometimes I miss some of the comics. I really did have to let those go for dirt cheap. Look, I'll level with you. I kept the stuff that was most emotionally important to me. Stuff like, you know, that my friends had worked on, or some of my very first comics that were important to me, like The Tick and some Ninja Turtles. But I sold most of it. I sold 28 long boxes for $1,000. You can probably imagine if I'd been collecting, you know, at that point for over 30 years, what that like probably was worth. But I had to move it. I had to move it. My GI Joe classified collection. I've been a completist. That's one of the few things I'm collecting now. I haven't really been getting any Donatellos or Hot Toys as much. I don't get Lego really anymore because my cats attack it. The one thing I collect right now is well, you could argue comics. I do get some comics. You guys get to see what that is, and I get all the GI Joe classified. I'm a completist on that. Soundwave is in the new series. Yeah, Soundwave is a big important character. If you haven't read it, I think this is the Wednesday where issue 2 of Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers comes out. I'm pretty sure it's this Wednesday, and that's going to start tying into GI Joe. So we'll see if that works or not. That's the big question in a lot of fans' minds. I think that a lot of Transformers fans are fine with it, and a lot of GI Joe fans are more of a let's wait and see. Like, are they going to be respectful to GI Joe lore, or is all the sci-fi stuff of Transformers going to potentially overwhelm it? Uh, a valid concern. A valid concern. From what I've heard so far, um, I think it could end up working what they've been talking about. And we will still get Larry Hama's standalone GI Joe ongoing comics. So that's good news. That's good news. But it is a valid question. Do these two properties have enough in common to coexist? I think that there's a way to make it work. Let me put it that way. I don't think I've seen that yet. Well, no, I've seen it once. As just its own standalone story. Tom Scioli's Transformers versus GI Joe is batshit crazy, but is kind of cool for what it is. It's fun. I'd recommend that if you haven't read it. Maybe someday Skybound will reprint that. I don't know. I don't think the early days are going to be focused on reprinting stuff so much as coming up with new ways of telling these stories. I loved when Cobra Commander appeared in the post-movie Transformers cartoon. Yes, Old Snake. By the way, in the Cobra Commander book that's launching maybe January, he first shows up looking kind of like Old Snake, just walking around in that kind of an outfit. That's an intentional homage, not a reference. It doesn't take place in the future. Oh, the Dreadnoks were great. And it is so crazy to see, like, the Dreadnoks were almost evil teddy bears. G.I. Joe almost went in a batshit sci-fi direction where, according to Larry Hama, Hasbro wanted to capitalize on the popularity of Ewoks and create evil teddy bears called like the Dreadnoks. And it was Larry who talked to them and said, how about a biker gang? And we make them sort of post-apocalyptic like Mad Max, but that's a little more grounded. And Hasbro was like, yeah, that could work too. But they almost went in a very different, crazy, crazy direction. I keep them in boxes because I just don't have time to play with them. Yeah. Is Larry Hama's standalone GI Joe starts off after the original Marvel run, or after the Devil's Due or IDW series? Good questions. When Larry continued his run at IDW, it picked up from where he left off at Marvel. So you can ignore, even though Devil's Due technically continued the Marvel run, IDW allowed Larry to ignore that and continue his story. So it went for 151 issues, I want to say, at Marvel, and then up to issue 299 at IDW. All, Larry Hama minus like 2 or 3 Marvel issues that were fill-ins early on. And then it's continuing now at Skybound. But Larry Hama's continuity is Larry Hama's continuity. in my opinion, since he's the guy that was also writing the file cards and stuff on all the action figures from day one, Larry Hama's take is my personal definitive take on G.I. Joe, but I'm up for like other interpretations here and there. It's a really long run by one person, though. Really long run. You know, it is worth noting. Yeah, like there, I don't know how many issues were like fill-ins that Larry didn't write on at Marvel. I want to say it was 2 issues of the main series and like 1 of G.I. Joe special missions. But one of my buddies that's really into G.I. Joe might know better than me. Like, if Hooded Cobra Commander 788 was here, or if Rob Ears area is still here, like those guys would probably know that a little better than me. Yeah, Larry should get to go do it as long as he wants. And fortunately, there is a Hasbro exec that said that's their intent. They want Larry to do it for as long as he wants, which is awesome. In American comics, the longest run by like one single creator from like on everything is going to be the 300 issues by Dave Sim on Cerebus, sort of. It gets a little wonky because then on Spawn, Todd McFarlane has been involved as either the artist or the writer from day one, and that's like around, I don't know what, issue 330 or something like that, 330. So that one has gone further. It's just that he did one or the other job, not like, one consistent job, but it's been his. Savage Dragon's getting close to 300 issues. But Larry Hama's G.I. Joe, minus like 1 or 2 fill-ins, like I say, is going to cross 300 issues very soon. And that's a big deal in American comics. There have been longer running Japanese comics by the same creator. Again, I'm talking by the same creator because, like if you look at something like, well, what about the Phantom comic strip? Okay, well, that's changed over the years. Who's running it? Things like that. I've been wondering what your thoughts are on writer Jonathan Hickman. He's personally one of my favorite writers still at Marvel. I like Jonathan Hickman a lot. I guess not everybody does, and that's okay. I like his ideas. I thought that his Avengers run leading up to Secret Wars was really cool. I really liked that. I liked his Fantastic Four run. I like East of West. That's a creator-owned thing he did. There's a lot by Jonathan Hickman I like. I liked House of X, Powers of 10. I think X-Men kind of fell off after that. Some people still like it, which is fine. Anyway, he's done a lot that I like. Some people get mad because he does a lot of infographics. That really doesn't bother me. I don't think stylistically that's that big a deal. Yeah, as far as writers these days, I like them quite a bit. Yeah, absolutely. You talking Stan Lee and Jack Kirby? I definitely read those. And then, yeah, trying to think when I stopped. I've read X-Men from basically the beginning in like 62 or wherever through when did I drop off? It's hard to say because I did eventually drop off. I stuck with it through like the sort of Scott Lobdell years after like Jim Lee and stuff. I fell off briefly and then came back for Grant Morrison's New X-Men and then Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men. And then I think I fell off again until Jonathan Hickman stuff. Blowtorch with the flamethrower, Roadblock holding a 50 cal. They unleashed heck on those poor Cobra soldiers. Well, Cobra had some pretty tough guys too, though. Cobra had some pretty dangerous characters. Did you just hear my cat shout? I think he's hungry for dinner. Yeah, to him, this probably feels closer to like an hour later, which is close to when we give him his second dinner. So he's probably getting really hungry right about now and like wondering why we're not feeding him. This is the time of year anybody with pets knows that like all of a sudden your pet like wants to be fed an hour early because they don't understand daylight savings. Does anybody else here remember what their very first comic book they read was? Or if not that, maybe the first comic book you purchased yourself with your own money, whether, even if that was like, an allowance or something like that. Like, do you remember either the first comic you read or the first comic you bought? I remember the first comic I bought was a Transformers comic. And in retrospect, it wasn't that great, but at the time, it was everything to me. I'll feed him. Oh, that's kind of you. New 52 Justice League Volume 1. Oh, okay. Last Starfighter number 3. What an obscure one, but you end up with this stuff. I totally get that. Iron Man 228 and Captain America 341, a crossover. Yeah. I remember that era, but I don't remember the exact story that was the crossover at the time. Was that right after sort of Armor Wars and during the Captain era where he was running around as the Captain? I think it was. Sort of a big movie at the time. Calvin and Hobbes collections? That makes sense. G.I. Joe number 2. Is that the one where it's got them all on the cover and they're up in like the Arctic Circle? They're all wearing like snow jackets and stuff. Is that number 2? I feel like that's what number 2 was. Wolverine number 5. With John Buscema drawing? Whoops, it's going fast now. I guess it caught up. Ninja Turtles Black and White. First red was New Universe Spitfire. Got it. Yeah. Yes, during Armor Wars. Okay, I thought so. Thank you. A Sonic comic? Star Wars issue 1 of a 4-issue limited series. I didn't read the rest until 30 years later. Can't remember the first one I've read, but the earliest must have been the last issue of the Venom run by Daniel Way, art by Scotty Young. That's fun. Nightfall issues of Batman, those covers with the long ears. Yeah, Kelly Jones. Well, if you like that art, just so you know, there is currently a crowdfunding campaign for a Dracula book drawn by Kelly Jones, written by Matt Wagner. Grendel and Mage. Maybe that's up your alley. First series I ever finished was Dark Phoenix. Great story. Great story. That was that was, in my opinion, the real highlight of John Byrne's art. Not to say he didn't do other good stuff after, but that was kind of a highlight. And I think I give a lot of that credit to Terry Austin's inking in those days. Terry Austin was very much from that Continuity Comics Neil Adams mold at the time. And I just think that they were a great fit together. Yeah, very interesting era for John Byrne stuff. Deadpool, The Circle Chase. I don't think I read that one. That one, yeah. That's kind of you, David. Thank you. Trying to do my best. Terry Austin added a lot to John Byrne's art. And, John Byrne was younger and he did a lot of detail. There's a certain era where I've been studying lately. Maybe small spoiler for what's coming up on Comic Tropes, where John Byrne just sort of his art simplified a little. As in, he made choices to do bigger panels. more sort of medium and close-up shots of the characters as compared to detailed backgrounds with a lot of action. There was a choice that he made at a certain point. Avengers versus Defenders, Black Panther chasing Doc Strange. Very fun. Very fun. Thank you for the super chat. Circle Chase was some early Joe Mad, wasn't it? If it was, I definitely read that. I read the first few Deadpool things by Joe Madureira. I didn't. Oh, okay. That was okay. Then I did read it. I just didn't remember that was the subtitle of the story arc. I did read that. I can literally close my eyes and see the panels where Jean passes into the Phoenix Force in perfect detail. It was a great era of X-Men. It really was. And people say it, and you're like, well, maybe you guys that read that are idealizing it. And that's a fair concern, but I'll be honest, that Chris Claremont, John Byrne era of X-Men was very, very good. Days of Future Past and the Dark Phoenix saga, I think, really hold up pretty darn well as X-Men stories. And I think that a lot of X-Men stories have tried to replicate the themes, if not the exact story beats for that stuff. So yeah. Great era. Great era. Ian Churchill drew the second Deadpool miniseries. My first purchase was Adjectiveless Spider-Man, The Light the Night storyline. Great story. Klaus Janson on art. I think I read that, Joe, but it doesn't really ring a bell as to what the exact story was, but I do sort of remember that. My first comic, I remember, like I say, the first comic I bought was a random issue of Transformers, like probably in the early 20s or something. It was one with a guy called the Mechanic on the cover, a guy who had like stolen some Transformer guns and beaten them. But the first ones I read would have been before that. I know that I had a random issue of The Flash versus Gorilla Grodd. I had an issue of The Thing, Ben Grimm on like Battle World or something. I had an issue of the Smurfs, and I had an issue of Winnie the Pooh. So those, all four of those would have been bought for me probably on a car ride. Like my parents must have bought them for me just to keep me entertained on a long car ride. I don't remember which of them would have been the first. I just remember that I had those for a long time before I started reading comics. Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I definitely, just to be clear, I am talking mostly comic books, but I had a bunch of Garfield books before that. There was a time where I found them very funny. And then all of a sudden I sort of got older and I was like, this is pretty repetitious. I don't know why I found this quite so funny when I was younger, but that's okay. I definitely did. I'm not going to lie and say that I didn't find it funny. All right. I was going to try to have little bits of highlights in this, but I feel like it would be cheating with the light source. So I'm actually blacking a bunch of this out. Can hear my cat Jack really yelling. He'd being silly. Not Lily. Lily being a good girl. We all found Garfield funny once upon a time? Maybe. Showing my age here, my first comic was given to me when I was 4 in the 70s, Submariner number 10. That's when John Buscema was drawing it, though, right? If I'm remembering right, and he looked cool. Definitely looked cool. What would you call the worst comic run on any title you ever read? So you mean just the whole run was kind of bad, not just a bad issue? There's a couple things that kind of come to mind. One of them I made an episode about. I thought that the Chuck Austin written run of X-Men was pretty bad. Pretty bad. Uh, I would also say that, like, in the 90s, there were so many comics being published, folks. So many. And Marvel and DC lost a lot of their top talent and tried to just imitate what was popular at Image. I do remember one that looked especially bad was when they changed Justice League to Justice League Extreme. I felt like that was pretty bad. Barracuda, yeah, that's going back. Yeah, that was not a great era, although there's still one or two good issues mixed within that, like the issue where Aunt May passed away. I thought that J.M. DeMatteis, I believe, wrote that one, and it was really good. They retconned it, but at the time, it was really good. First comic I remember reading is Superman 80-page giant issue 11, The Greatest Superman Luthor Fights in 1965. Very cool. Bill Watterson often used larger panels to reflect on the medium as such, changing style, perspective. Suppose that played a part in me getting interested in comics more seriously. Such a great artist, best artist on comic strips of his generation, no question. Just the best. I was more into newspaper strips than comics as a kid. I got into my Marvel and DC fix from the animated series. Yeah, that's cool. I'm trying to think of exactly how I want to sort of represent most of this stuff down here. I think I'm going to put a lot of Megatron in shadow and hope that it looks okay. I don't want to give this guy a bad cover. So stressful. Drawing for myself is one thing. Drawing on a blank piece of paper that I could go back and edit is one thing. But this is like on a cover of a comic that for somebody, and I just don't want to make a mistake and ruin it. I already felt like the shadow shouldn't have been on the hand here, so I used some whiteout to sort of touch it up. It's hard to show it. Someday I'll get a setup where I can easily like just sort of grab at the lens here to zoom in and out, or get a program that allows me that flexibility. But for now, just sort of playing it by ear. Meow. Drawing is so relaxing. Guys, I'll open up a little with you because there's not too many people here. Nobody's going to watch this except people that care. Um, Boy, have I been fighting depression lately, just on a massive level. But to be clear, I'm not like necessarily concerned about it. It does tend to hit me this time of year all the times. I suffer from something called seasonal affective disorder. So you add that on top of the anxiety and depression, though, and it's just a really bad time of year in general for me. I'm a lot less sunlight, which actually does sincerely affect my well-being on a pretty serious level, and I just feel terrible. I'm just stressed out about everything. I've got this feeling, this anxiety that isn't really caused by anything specific. I just feel like, say you knew a family member was in the hospital and you felt like you kept forgetting to go and visit them. Something like that, something like important that's nagging at the back of you. It's awful. But I try to keep busy, force myself to work, force myself to socialize at work, and that's kind of good for me. Yeah, a couple people saying that they deal with it too. I will try to keep the lights on. So, yeah, it's the season for depression in the Pacific Northwest. It's true. Uh, I always sort of notice it like just shortly before the daylight savings and everything. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, right, right. But it's affecting me. It means that I feel like I'm working slower than I should. I'm trying not to work slowly on comic tropes, but I feel like I'm like not going fast enough to make everybody happy. And uh, you know Patreon sort of like has fallen off some, so that kind of like hurts a tiny bit. um but we'll get there. I'll get there. Just sort of opening up a little bit about what I'm dealing with. It's really hard right now. Like I just feel terrible. I don't want to feel terrible, but some of it's out of my hands. It's just the way my brain chemistry works. But yeah, I feel terrible. Oh, I'm sorry to hear you had one of those days too. I wouldn't wish stuff like this on anybody, so I'm sorry. I have tried therapy lamps. I don't feel like I feel a huge difference from them. I'm glad that it works for you. I have tried some of those UV lights. Hmm. It's interesting. A couple people there saying that it has helped. I've tried it. I didn't feel like I really noticed much of a difference. But I sincerely appreciate you guys thinking about me. That's very kind. Very kind. Definitely not trying to say anything to worry about anybody. I'm taking care of myself, but just I feel like poops. That makes me think of something funny that happened at work the other day. All right, so how do I explain this best? Technically, this story comes from one of my coworkers, my friend. Well, I won't name anybody just to be on the safe side. Comes from him. I'm going to tell it as though it happened to me, but really, I'm telling his story. If that makes sense, it's just easier. I'm going to pretend it's mine. So, go to the men's room. Just using the urinal, and I hear from the stall, "Ugh!" like a grunting, and I'm like, what? And then I hear, "Hold on, I just need to take care of something. I'll call you right back." Guy was just taking a phone call while he tried to get that through. Again, so this is told to me by my friend and coworker. He goes, "I wanted to help. I wanted to tell him, you push, I'll pull." It was always something. Grunting on the toilet is not good. He was Whoever the guy was, he was trying to force that one out. Reminded me of that first Austin Powers movie where he's like, "Who does number two work for?" I'm immature. That'll make me laugh. No, he didn't flood the bathroom. I've told you guys that story of flooding the bathroom at the movie theater, right? According to Dwight Schrute, grunting is scientifically proven to add more power. All right, fair enough. He used his he used the men's stall as his office. It's kind of disgusting, honestly. Jeez. Okay, I did tell the story good. Because yeah, that's an embarrassing one. But it is funny. Did a light just go out? Wait, I still function.
What a bet.
That's my final words of Megatron and Starscream. You're welcome. Just nailed it. Was your coworker the Fonz? Yes. Yes. Even though this happened a day ago and I'm real, my coworker was in fact the Fonz. So you guessed, you read between the lines and figured it out. I'm impressed. No more, Optimus Prime. I beg of you. Starscream on the toilet. Oh, what is it? Oh my goodness. Is it really almost 8 o'clock? Wait, did I do this for 3 hours? Oh my goodness. Guys, I lost track of time completely. I have stuff to do. I've got to work on comic tropes. I've got to have dinner. No wonder my wife was acting strange about, not strange, but just like acting like it was strange. I usually will feed the cats at this point is all. Thank you, Chrissy. I need to get going, guys. Thought I was going to finish this. Obviously needs a little bit more work than just a couple little sessions. This was fun, though. I had a good time talking with all of you. This to be continued again. That's okay. We'll get there. We'll get there. I'll get there. Let's see what's coming up. You have to sleep. Thank you for staying with me so long. Appreciate it. Means a lot to me that you were here with me. I'm going to turn this off and let's see. Oh, I see what went out. My my purple sort of key light. That went off. Yeah. Well, this is a good time then to call it a night, isn't it? There's a lot of comics coming out this week, though. There's a lot. It's going to be a big week for the comic book store, so I'll probably have more to talk about for comic book reviews next week. Maybe I'll luck out and there won't be as much comic book news, and I can just sort of focus on some comic books and drawing, which is kind of a fun thing. Jason Todd was interesting, but he's not in my top 3. Anyway, you guys are great. Tell you what, there's 1, there's 2. That's pretty good. Boy, you know, the lighting here this is actually a pretty good lighting, though, isn't it? Without the sort of purple light behind me, this light kind of just gives a slightly warm orangey glow. I feel like that's not reflecting too bad in my glasses and gives me a color that doesn't make me look too pale. That's not bad. Just admiring that. I think that this works. But I kind of like having a colored light here and there. Guys, I'm going to take off. Double salute. Keep reading comics. See you real soon. Take care. Hey, baby, I hear them blues are calling. Toss salads and scrambled eggs. Mercy. And, baby, I seem a bit confused. Yeah, maybe, but I got you pegged. Ha ha! But I don't know what to do with that tossed salad and scrambled eggs. They calling again. Good night.